Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of Linda Curry. To avoid tragedy, sometimes it is enough just to walk away, to leave someone who behaves strangely and potentially dangerously, but in some heartbreaking cases, the victim and the killer remain fated to be together. Leading to an irreversible outcome, Linda was once a charming woman with impeccable taste. She balanced her career during the week with dancing on weekends, which helped her relax and stay active even in her 40s. She looked stunning with her education. Linda achieved professional success, earned a good income, and maintained her perfect image. In 1989, she met Paul Curry at work. Paul quickly impressed Linda with his intelligence. Their relationship gradually developed into marriage, which took place on September 12, 1992, in Las Vegas. Compared to the accomplished Linda, Paul seemed rather ordinary, leaving many to wonder why such a successful woman was attracted to him. Although Linda spoke of him with admiration, their friends felt the couple lacked harmony. Paul was short and not particularly noticeable. Except for his intelligence, he lacked wealth and career success, which he often attributed to his age. Many found Linda's choice unusual. Her friends felt she was simply flattering herself by being with a younger man who was 13 years her junior, about a month after the wedding. Linda called her friend Mary Siebold to tell her that Paul wanted to buy her a $1 million life insurance policy, and Paul is the beneficiary. Soon after, Linda began to experience strange and disturbing changes in her life. Previously full of life and energy, she was now tired all the time, and her appearance was affected. These symptoms caused Linda's relatives and Mary to begin to suspect that Paul might be the cause of Linda's declining health. Paul firmly denied these suspicions and even threatened to sue Mary for slander after she made some unfounded comments. However, this did not alleviate her suspicion that Paul might be behind Linda's difficulties. Mary continued to contact Linda and noticed that she was becoming increasingly weak. Sensing that something was wrong, Mary advised Linda to leave Paul, believing that he could be a threat. However, Linda insisted that Paul was not the cause of her health problems. She often spoke highly of Paul, describing him as a loving and devoted husband who showed his affection through compliments and romantic gestures. Linda believed that her problems could stem from the stress of her job rather than her relationship. Despite seeing doctors regularly, Linda's health continued to worsen. The medications prescribed had no noticeable effect. Back in the 1960s, when Mary and Linda worked at a nuclear power plant, Linda was known for her impeccable fashion sense, and Mary was often surprised by how she maintained her figure despite enjoying food. During their regular meetings at work and outings, the two women formed a strong bond, sharing everything about their lives. Mary admired Linda's exceptional taste as she skillfully matched outfits, shoes, bags, and accessories. Mary and Linda shared a passion for fashion and beauty. They were also ambitious, career-focused individuals determined to succeed in their respective fields. Linda advanced quickly in her career. She started as a secretary and eventually became a manager with her own office. Linda had been married twice, but had ended both marriages. Afterward, she began a long-term relationship with an insurance agent named Bill Sandretto. They dated for over 8 years, but they never chose to get married. Primarily because Bill valued his independence, Linda and Bill went through multiple breakups during this time, but they always reconciled since the 1980s. Linda has become the head of the department and started earning a good income. Linda was enthusiastic about spending money, but she made an effort to avoid impulsive purchases. She managed her budget well and planned to make several major purchases. In addition to maintaining her fashionable appearance, she bought a car and a spacious house in San Clemente, California. This house was the dream home she had envisioned for many years. Finally, she was able to buy it for herself, marking a significant milestone that confirmed her success. This achievement filled Linda with pride. In early 1989, Around the time of Linda's 45th birthday, her relationship with Bill came to an end. Paul, a consulting engineer hired at her company, frequently encountered her. He had a background in nuclear engineering and was a young professional with experience in power plant safety organization. However, he was seen as somewhat eccentric and quickly earned a reputation for being selfish and arrogant. His behavior was often deemed unacceptable, and he used his intelligence as an excuse for it. While Paul was indeed intellectually gifted and outperformed many of his colleagues based on his achievements, he also claimed to have won $26 in the lottery on his first try, which he attributed to careful calculation. Additionally, he belonged to an international community of high IQ individuals and often showcased his certificates. However, aside from that, he lacked any notable accomplishments. Paul was intelligent and charming, which impressed his boss, Linda, who quickly fell in love with him after 3 years of dating. They decided to marry. Fulfilling a long-held dream of Linda's, Linda often described their relationship as very loving, which seemed to justify her choice, even though she later confided to friends that there was no intimacy between them, as Paul showed little interest. Shortly after their marriage, Paul suggested they merge their finances. Linda contributed most of the income to their household, although they had plenty of money initially. Linda soon realized that her salary was not enough to cover their expenses. Despite her careful budgeting in the past, she found it increasingly difficult to save, and her funds were nearly depleted each month before her next paycheck. When she investigated the issue, she discovered that Paul had been using their joint finances to support 2 ex-wives and 3 children, whom Linda had not known about before their marriage. He dismissed this as a minor deception, and unfortunately, Linda believed him. This revelation surprised her friends, as she had always been financially responsible. As their marriage continued, Paul displayed increasingly suspicious behavior, leading to repeated concerning incidents, along with the story of the insurance contract. This raised red flags since he entered the marriage without any assets. While Linda owned a large mansion, multiple cars, and had invested in designer renovations, she still dressed elegantly and had a taste for expensive items, none of which Paul possessed. Paul must have known that his wife already had several life insurance policies in place, but he was not listed as a beneficiary on any of them. Her sister, ex-boyfriend, and other close relatives were. Instead, there seems to be no good reason for a new insurance policy. Many suspect that his motives were driven by a desire to gain financially in the event of her death, and many began to seriously fear that he would not just wait for such events, but might somehow expedite the process. Just 6 months into their marriage, Linda began to doubt her husband's true intentions. Around this time, her friend Frankie Thurber went through a divorce and found herself in a tough situation. In 1993, Linda offered Frankie a temporary place to stay in her mansion. Influenced by Frankie's experiences, Linda started to question whether her husband genuinely loved her, thinking he was trying to exploit their relationship. As a result, she asked Frankie not only to stay with her, but also to keep an eye on Paul and report any suspicious behavior. Even Frankie noticed that Paul had strong feelings for Linda, which showed in his actions. Although Paul wasn't wealthy and couldn't shower her with gifts, he expressed his love by taking care of her. He would cook delicious meals and pamper her with treats when she came home from work, followed by running a hot, foamy bath for her. This daily ritual became Linda's favorite. Observing this, and after listening to Frankie, even Mary eventually agreed that Paul seemed to be a loving husband, dedicated to making his wife happy. In June 1993, just before their first wedding anniversary, Linda's health began to decline. She experienced a mysterious illness, feeling persistently unwell without any typical symptoms of common ailments, like a cold. Instead, she suffered from ongoing stomach issues. Her condition worsened rapidly, and within a few days, she was hospitalized. By then, Linda was unable to get out of bed, shocking everyone around her, including her doctors. as she was once a healthy and vibrant 45-year-old woman, despite extensive examinations. The cause of her illness remained undetermined. In early July 1993, Linda was admitted to a hospital in Samaritan due to gastrointestinal problems. She was given a private room and assigned a qualified nurse for her care. Paul, her husband, stayed by her side and did everything he could to support her. 2 days after the admission, the nurse connected Linda to an IV for hydration and briefly left to attend to another patient. When the nurse returned, she noticed something alarming. The saline bag appeared unusually dark. The fluid looked cloudy and slightly yellowish, suggesting that something might have been added to it. The nurse quickly disconnected Linda from the IV, took the bag for lab analysis, and reported her findings to the hospital management. On that day, Linda received a visit from her ex-boyfriend Bill, who was shocked by her frail appearance. Linda looked emaciated, as if she was struggling to survive. Within a week, she decided to go home, despite having difficulty walking, and was discharged from the hospital. However, her happiness was short-lived. Just 21 days later, she was readmitted due to a stroke. Linda nearly died, but was saved at the hospital. Subsequently, an analysis of her IV bag revealed a dangerously high dose of the painkiller lidocaine, which should not have been present for intravenous use. The medical center's management contacted the police, prompting an investigation that focused on one suspect, Paul, who was accused of attempting to poison his wife. Despite these alarming developments, Linda maintained that she loved Paul and had no plans to leave him. Did she realize that he might be the poisoner? It's possible that she simply pushed such thoughts away and didn't want to believe them. Meanwhile, her friends and family rallied against Paul, urging Linda to end the relationship for her safety. Nevertheless, she chose to stay with him. Linda eventually recovered from her mysterious illness, but the investigation into the poisoning stalled without any conclusions. Just 5 months later, in December 1993, Linda fell ill again with the same mysterious illness that doctors could not diagnose. Paul took her to a different hospital in Mission Viejo, where no one knew him, although he expressed distrust in the local specialists. The doctors there largely repeated the same diagnoses and conclusions as before. It appeared that Linda was being poisoned slowly. The medical staff also began to suspect her husband, who was always nearby. A nurse was assigned to monitor and care for Linda. She secretly communicated with Linda and warned her that her husband might have ulterior motives. A few days later, a similar incident occurred to one that had happened 5 months earlier. The nurse had briefly stepped out, leaving Paul alone with Linda. When the nurse returned, Paul was missing, and the IV drip bag looked different. It was later analyzed and found to be contaminated with unknown substances. The medical staff was already suspicious of Paul, believing he might be involved in an attempt to harm Linda to ensure her safety. They even placed a warning sign at the entrance of her room with the content prohibiting Paul Curry from entering without an escort. The police were called back to Linda's room, where she explained that Paul had significant credit card debts, yet she insisted he was a wonderful, devoted, and loving husband. She maintained that he was very kind and could never harm her. It was possible that both medical institutions had misjudged the situation. When investigators interviewed Paul, he insisted that he had no idea what was happening to his wife and was simply waiting for her recovery. However, case records revealed a troubling discovery during searches of their mansion. In Paul's room, on his dresser, were all the life insurance policies taken out on his wife. This raised suspicions after Linda was discharged from the hospital. She spoke with Frankie, who confirmed that she had not placed the documents there, which meant Paul had done it. There was no one else involved. It was evident that Paul aimed to profit from her death. Despite this, Linda did not believe he was capable of such a terrible act. Nearly 6 months later, on June 9, 1994, Mary received an email from Paul informing her that Linda was feeling worse than ever and that an ambulance had been called. He believed Linda was dying and urged Mary to come and support her later. Around midnight, Paul called 911, claiming he had awakened to find his wife not breathing. In subsequent conversations with Linda's family and the police, he maintained that he sensed something was wrong, saw that Linda was barely breathing, and tried to perform artificial respiration, but she did not respond, prompting him to call for emergency help. By the time Linda arrived at the hospital, she had already died. Paul appeared to be a heartbroken widower, crying on the shoulders of Linda's family and friends, while they all quietly suspected him of murder. During the autopsy, the forensic expert found an unusual mark behind Linda's right ear, which they believed might be a sign of a syringe injection. A toxicology report later showed that Linda had a lethal amount of nicotine in her blood. This was particularly puzzling since Linda had never smoked. How could nicotine have entered her system? Consequently, her death was ruled a murder. But authorities found no evidence linking Paul to the crime. There were no syringes or needles at the scene, and the IV bags from previous cases did not have Paul's fingerprints. Meanwhile, Paul attempted to claim $1 million in life insurance from his deceased wife because he had previously successfully convinced Linda to purchase a new policy. Soon after Linda's death, it was discovered that she had handwritten a note, leaving half of her estate to her sister. This infuriated Paul, who sought legal advice to claim the entire inheritance, but he was unsuccessful. Everything had to be divided. In the end, Paul Curry collected $419 from Linda's 2 life insurance policies and her retirement plan. It also came to light that all of Paul's educational and professional credentials were forged. Even the supposed International Organization of Intellectuals was a scam. He hadn't even graduated from college. As a result, he was fired from his job. Now, these incidents were decided to be viewed in a new light. In 2002, the former state prosecutor retired, and a new one took over, showing immediate interest in Linda's case. At the time of Linda's death, he was still in law school, but he had since become the district attorney and was eager to make a name for himself. He was particularly intrigued by the media used to store evidence from the mid-90s, especially the extensive analysis of microcassette analysis. All conversations with suspects and witnesses had been recorded, including an interview with Linda conducted shortly before her death while she was in the hospital in August 19, 1993. During the investigation, authorities believed Linda was a victim of poisoning and sought to identify any potentially dangerous individuals in her life who might want to harm her. Mary quickly named one suspect, Paul Curry. He had the most significant motive. He stood to gain $1 million from insurance and ownership of his wife's property. The new prosecutor investigated the background of Paul and found that his entire life was based on deception. A poison expert specializing in substances like nicotine was consulted for the case. He determined that the nicotine level in the victim's blood was 4 to 5 times higher than a lethal dose, which could not have resulted from smoking alone. Given the forensic expert's initial findings, it was concluded that Paul had administered a fatal injection discreetly behind Linda's ear. Death occurred approximately 20 to 30 minutes later, leaving no chance to save Linda. In addition to nicotine, significant amounts of a sedative and sleeping pill were detected in her blood. It appeared that he first sedated his wife to administer the lethal injection without raising suspicion. Adding the sleeping pill was easy for him since he often cooked for Linda and experimented with different sauces and spices. A neighbor testified that Paul went to the store for cigarettes that evening. However, it was clear that Linda could not have absorbed such a high dose of nicotine even if she had smoked 5 packs. The nicotine must have been injected. After losing his job, Paul relocated to Kansas, where he remarried and had a son. He initially worked as a used car salesman and did well, but later grew bored and switched to being a building inspector. During this time, he had never broken the law and seemed to be a good family man and a respected member of the community. On November 9, 2010, Sergeant Schull questioned Paul Curry under the pretense of questioning him. as a potential witness in an unrelated case. In reality, they aimed to discuss Linda's death. Paul, believing they were out-of-state police officers unfamiliar with him and his late wife, began talking freely when asked about his past relationships, without requesting any identification. To the officer's surprise, he shared a story that contradicted his earlier statements. This led to the decision to arrest Paul Curry for revealing too much information. 16 years after his wife's death, Paul was finally held accountable. Unfortunately, justice did not hurry, and he did not appear in court until September 2014. During this time, he had spent all that time in jail. Paul faced charges of premeditated murder, which, according to state law, could result in life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The defense attorney employed a typical strategy of denial, arguing that the prosecution lacked direct evidence connecting Paul to Linda's murder. The defense claimed that Linda had given herself a nicotine enema, supposedly based on someone's suggestion of this unusual treatment for her stomach pain. Meanwhile, the prosecution stated that a sedative was found in her blood. Noting that there was no prescription for it and that it wasn't provided by the hospital, they alleged that Paul had given his wife the drug to sedate her before the murder. The prosecution also claimed that Paul was the only person in Linda's life with a serious motive and had been alone with her for at least 6 hours prior to her death, clearly having done something to her, as there was no one else who could have done it. After both sides presented their arguments, the jury went into deliberation, which lasted a day and a half. As a result, Paul Curry was found guilty of first-degree murder with the intent to profit, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Paul never admitted his guilt, so the exact circumstances surrounding Linda's death remain a mystery. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Stephen Freeman. Stephen Andrew Freeman was born on January 1st, 1995, in Thomason, Georgia, to Troy and Jennifer Freeman. He and his brother Blake grew up in a happy and healthy environment with no major issues with their parents or society. Stephen was known for being kind, responsive, and calm, which helped him make many friends. Stephen attended Spalding High School and later studied at Gordon State College in Griffin, Georgia. Mary Catherine Higdon, his future partner, came from a respectable family and was raised with a carefree and humorous spirit. She was creative and enjoyed putting on mini plays for her family and neighbors. Stephen and Mary fell deeply in love during their senior year and remained inseparable. They shared many common interests, including a love for nature, hiking, fishing, and hunting. In 2012, Stephen updated his Facebook status to reflect his relationship with Mary, and the couple frequently posted photos together. Both families accepted each other's children, and after completing their education, the young couple moved in together. Stephen worked as a plumber, while Mary was a teacher's assistant and part-time salesperson. By summer 2018, Stephen and Mary had been living together for 7 years, but they had not yet gotten married. On August 1st, 2018, at 10:42 p.m., Mary called emergency services in a state of panic. She reported that she had accidentally shot her boyfriend while handling a Glock 43 firearm, unaware that it was loaded. When paramedics and police arrived, Mary was in shock, kneeling beside Stephen's motionless body, crying and begging for help. She was eventually pulled away, allowing the officers to examine Stephen and provide first aid. Despite being shot in the chest, Stephen was still breathing and was rushed to Spalding Regional Hospital. Sadly, he died just before midnight. In shock and struggling to comprehend the tragedy, Mary visited the police station to give her account of the events. She claimed that the shot was accidental, explaining that there were always firearms in their home for self-defense, and that Stephen would often leave a pistol on the nightstand before sleep. On the fateful evening in question, Mary Catherine claimed she only intended to hand Stephen the pistol, but it accidentally discharged. She insisted she didn't know the gun was loaded and would never harm Stephen, the love of her life, intentionally. However, investigators discovered signs of a struggle in the kitchen, with food and dishes scattered everywhere. Detectives Adam Trammell and Chris Wilson found Mary's story highly unlikely and decided to investigate further. They questioned Mary again, using pressure tactics to get to the truth. Eventually, Mary confessed to shooting Stephen in anger during an argument. She revealed that she wanted to leave him, and the argument escalated. The investigators recorded the conversation, but unfortunately, most of the recording was lost due to technical issues. Further investigation showed that the pistol couldn't have fired accidentally, as it required a deliberate trigger pull. Moreover, the bullet's trajectory indicated that the pistol was pointed directly at Stephen. The detectives also questioned Mary's behavior, suspecting she was overacting and exaggerating her distress. It was also revealed that Mary worked at a gun store where she received thorough training on handling firearms. This meant she knew how to safely handle the pistol, making the accidental discharge scenario unlikely. The investigation uncovered inconsistencies in Mary's statements, including a claim that she tossed the pistol to Stephen, causing it to discharge. This contradicted her initial statement that she was simply handing him the pistol when it fired. Mary's changing statements worked against her, suggesting she was lying and trying to conceal her guilt. She was detained and charged with multiple crimes, including felony murder and aggravated assault. During the trial, Lieutenant Wilson disputed Mary's claim of an accident, instead arguing that she had planned and executed the crime deliberately. A key piece of evidence was the presence of cooking grease on the pistol's slide, which Mary explained was due to her preparing dinner for Stephen that evening. Friends and relatives of the couple described their complicated and tumultuous relationship, marked by frequent arguments and instances of Mary threatening to harm Stephen or herself with a weapon. Despite the complexities of the case, the evidence ultimately pointed to Mary's guilt. Stephen and Mary Catherine had a tumultuous relationship, with many weapons present in their home. 2 days before the tragedy on July 30th, 2018, they exchanged warm messages wishing each other a good day. However, the next day, Stephen told his mother he wouldn't return home to that devil and stayed at his friend Thomas's place. On August 1st, 2018, when Stephen didn't come home, Mary sent him hundreds of messages begging him to return. She prepared dinner and waited for him, later learning he was at Thomas's place and going to pick him up. They encountered each other on the road, and Mary shouted that she was waiting for him at home for dinner. Stephen replied that he was coming home. However, the evening ended in tragedy instead of a reconciliatory dinner. The police initially believed the case was a premeditated act driven by Mary's anger, but her defense team revealed a different side to their relationship. At her trial on June 17, 2019, Mary Catherine Higdon refused a plea deal for life imprisonment, insisting she couldn't harm Stephen because he was the love of her life. Mary claimed the incident was an accident and that she loved Stephen. She also accused him of abusive behavior, stating that he hit her twice and forced himself on her on the day of the tragedy. Friends and relatives testified that Mary was furious because Stephen often ignored her messages and calls. On the night of the incident, Stephen refused to eat the dinner Mary had prepared, which was the final straw for her. She couldn't hold back and fired at him. The prosecution presented physical evidence, including grease on the pistol and a sheet with bloodstains, showing that Stephen was not attacking Mary, but was sitting still on the bed when she shot him. In court, Mary finally gave a truthful testimony, describing Stephen as a harsh and controlling tyrant who had repeatedly hit, shaken, and threatened her. She confessed that he had constantly controlled and manipulated her, driving her to despair with unreasonable jealousy. The defense presented ample evidence to support her claims, including text messages that raised questions about who was the real tyrant and betrayer in the relationship. Stephen's message snippets suggested that he had insulted Mary Catherine and threatened her. However, what really sparked his anger was more disturbing. According to his friends, Stephen was furious with his girlfriend because he believed she had been unfaithful, which Mary denied. Mary Catherine claimed that Stephen had assaulted her twice before, and she feared he would hurt her again on August 1, 2018. That's why she took action in self-defense. The defense presented an expert and close relatives of Mary who could testify to the domestic violence. Mary's sister, Sarah Higdon, confirmed that she saw bruises on Mary's arm 2 weeks before the shooting, though she regrets not taking a photo and initially believing Mary's explanation that the bruises were accidental. A tearful Mary Higdon told the jury that on the night of the incident, she decided to end things with Stephen once and for all, telling him to leave the house. Stephen became enraged, attacked her, and in self-defense, she grabbed the pistol from the nightstand, accidentally firing it. After Mary Catherine gave emotional testimony, the prosecution and defense teams clashed with Stephen's former friends, who had been close to Mary for years, as they tried to portray their deceased friend in a positive light. Thomas Skinner, Stephen's best friend, described Stephen as a loyal and hard-working country boy, while portraying Mary Catherine as an obsessive and possessive girlfriend who constantly controlled and stalked him. According to Thomas, Mary Catherine and Stephen's relationship had become toxic over time, with Mary threatening to end her life whenever Stephen tried to leave her. He also claimed that during an argument, Mary had once pointed a pistol at her head in front of Stephen. Another witness, Alicia Varela, who worked with Stephen, testified that Mary would obsessively call Stephen throughout the day, even when he was at work. However, during her court testimony, Mary omitted a crucial detail that prosecutor Kate Lenhard highlighted. While Mary described their interactions and how their relationship had deteriorated into physical abuse, she never mentioned the moment when she claimed to have acted in self-defense and pulled the trigger. Prosecutor Kate Lenhard was skeptical of Mary's admission, pointing out that during cross-examination, Mary never mentioned being mistreated by Stephen. Lenhard repeatedly asked Mary if a woman who felt safe at home would confront her attacker late at night and bring him back home, but Mary's response was unconvincing. Lenhard then recreated the events of the accidental shooting as she believed they occurred. According to her version, Stephen came home, and after listening to Mary, they got into an argument because he refused to eat dinner. Enraged, Mary threw the prepared food around the kitchen. Stephen tried to avoid further conflict by going to the bedroom and sitting on the bed, likely waiting for Mary to calm down. However, Mary was determined to confront him, calling out to him twice without getting a response. She then entered the bedroom and shot Stephen in the left side of his neck. Kate Lenhard pointed out the inconsistencies in Stephen Freeman's stories during police interrogations and court hearings, highlighting the contradictions in his accounts. Mary Catherine Higdon provided an emotional testimony about the alleged abuse she suffered at the hands of Stephen Freeman. However, before handing the case over to the jury, Kate Lenhard urged them to consider the possibility that Mary Higdon was not acting in self-defense, but rather was a mastermind of manipulation. The prosecution presented additional evidence and counter-arguments despite the lost confession recording. A forensic examination showed that Stephen Freeman was sitting on the bed at the time of the shooting, making it impossible for him to have been attacking Mary Higdon. Furthermore, while Mary claimed that the gun was always kept unloaded, detectives suspected that the pistol was actually loaded on the evening of August 1, 2018, when Mary was preparing a rope for Stephen. Here's a clearer explanation. The presence of grease marks on the slide and inside the pistol led investigators to suspect that Mary Catherine might have loaded the pistol beforehand. However, those who knew Stephen Freeman, including colleagues, neighbors, family friends, and acquaintances, consistently described him as non-aggressive. Meanwhile, Mary Catherine changed her story at least 10 times during the investigation, which prosecutors attributed to fear. Mary Catherine rejected a plea deal because she was facing a potential death sentence. As the jury deliberated, they heard from all the witnesses and the accused. After just 10 minutes, the jury was ready to deliver their verdict, but two jurors had lingering doubts about the prosecution's case. These jurors felt that the investigators, in their eagerness to charge Mary Catherine with premeditated murder, had overlooked crucial facts. They were particularly concerned that the prosecution had failed to thoroughly investigate Stephen Freeman's phone, including his text messages and browsing history. Ultimately, the only significant evidence against Mary Catherine was her own lies, which weren't enough to prove her guilt. The jurors' arguments, particularly those of Victor and Chris, had a significant impact. After deliberating, the jury returned a unanimous verdict of not guilty, freeing Mary Catherine Higdon after a lengthy process. The 12 jurors reached the following conclusions. They found the defendant not guilty on the first charge of malicious action and the second charge of serious action. The judge subsequently acquitted Mary Catherine Higdon of all charges, including intentional action, reckless action, assault with a deadly weapon, and carrying a weapon during the commission of a crime. The verdict shocked many in the courtroom, including Jennifer Freeman, who struggled to contain her anger towards the jurors. Those supporting Stephen's family were also stunned by the outcome. Following her acquittal, Mary Catherine returned home to Griffin to be with her family. Since then, she has maintained a low profile, avoiding social media to evade unwanted media and public attention. Mary Catherine's Instagram profile is private, and there is no information available about her current location. It is believed that she has moved on from her difficult past and is now living a quiet, private life. Stephen Freeman's mother paid tribute to her son on social media, remembering him as a kind and loving person. He lived a life full of love, joy, and friendship, and everyone who knew him considered him a friend. He especially cherished the relationships he made while hunting and fishing. Stephen had a special way of showing love and care to those around him. He made people feel seen and heard, often making them laugh until they cried. He was always smiling, hugging, and staying close to those he cared about. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Paige Bergfeld. After high school, Paige attended the University of Florida's nursing school, where she met Howard Bigler. They started dating after realizing their mutual feelings for each other. After graduating with a nursing degree, Paige returned to Colorado to live with her family. In 1995, she and Howard got married. At first, they seemed like a happy couple, sharing many common interests and views. However, they had a significant disagreement that eventually led to their divorce. Paige wanted to have a child and start a family, but Howard didn't share her desire. This issue caused frequent arguments and discussions, but they couldn't find a compromise. In 1997, they decided to divorce. Despite this, they remained friends due to their strong connection. Paige later married Rob Dixon, but that marriage also ended in divorce. After her second divorce, Paige reconnected with Howard. He claimed to be one of the last people to see her alive. On the 28th, Howard and Paige, who were previously married, met in Eagle County, Colorado, to attend to personal matters. They spent Thursday together, after which they returned to their separate homes. Following their meeting, they continued to stay in touch through phone calls. Later, when Paige went missing, Howard quickly reached out to emergency services to report his concerns. During the call, he expressed his deep worry and belief that something terrible might have happened to her. Howard mentioned that Paige was a devoted mother who would never abandon her children without a valid reason. A recording of the call confirmed this, and cell tower data verified that Howard was in the Denver, Colorado area on the day Paige disappeared, which is a significant distance from where she was last seen. This evidence led the police to rule Howard out as a suspect. The investigation then focused on Paige's relationship with her second husband, Rob Dixon, and uncovered several suspicious incidents that required further investigation. Paige had previously reported her husband Rob to the police twice for harassment during their marriage. Before marrying Rob, Paige worked at a strip club in Denver, where she met him. Rob came from a wealthy family and had inherited a significant fortune. The two fell in love and got married in 1998. The couple settled in a luxurious home in Colorado, where Paige realized her dream of becoming a mother. Within a few years, they had 3 children who became the center of Paige's life. The early years of their marriage seemed happy, with the couple enjoying a luxurious lifestyle. However, things took a turn for the worse due to Rob's financial difficulties. Rob's family businesses faced severe issues, leading to a significant decline in their economic situation. As a result, Rob was forced to file for bankruptcy, which triggered a deep family crisis. By 2004, tensions had escalated to the point where Paige called emergency services twice. The first time, she reported that Rob had threatened to kill her and their children, but when the police arrived, they claimed to have resolved their issues. A year later, Paige reported Rob for assaulting her while she was holding their youngest child. Rob was arrested and charged with third-degree assault. He eventually pleaded guilty to 1 count of molestation, but the trial was dismissed and he avoided jail time. The couple's relationship continued to deteriorate, leading them to separate. Rob then moved to Pennsylvania. During the investigation into Paige's disappearance, Rob was interviewed to establish his alibi for that day. He claimed to have been at home and could not have harmed her. The investigators could not find any evidence to implicate Rob in her disappearance. In fact, Rob actively participated in the search for Paige. The investigating officers left no stone unturned in their effort to find clues and solve the mystery of the missing mother. The investigation into Paige's disappearance began with a thorough examination of her car. It was hoped that evidence in the car could help locate her or provide clues about what had happened. Sergeant Weiler of the County Sheriff's Department noted that arson is often used to destroy evidence, but in this case, the examination of the vehicle yielded valuable information. The driver's seat was found to be pushed back as far as it would go, indicating that the last person to drive the car was a tall individual, inconsistent with Paige's short stature. The trunk of the car contained Paige's notebook, with pages torn out from June 26 to June 29. As time passed, the search for Paige became increasingly urgent. A break in the case came when a driver stopped on a highway southeast of town to fix a flat tire and discovered a checkbook lying nearby. He reported it to the authorities, who then searched the area and found additional items belonging to Paige, including medical records and insurance cards. Sergeant Weiler's investigation into Paige Bergfeld's disappearance took a dramatic turn when he found a business card on the road, leading him to a shocking discovery. Paige was secretly working as an escort under the alias Carrie. This revelation completely upended the investigation, as it revealed a side of Paige's life that her loved ones knew nothing about. Previously, it was believed that Paige was a devoted mother who worked hard to provide for her children after her divorce. She had started her own children's clothing business, taught dance lessons, and sold kitchen supplies. Despite her busy schedule, she always made time for her children and was actively involved in their school activities. However, the discovery of the secret phone Paige used for her escort work revealed a completely different picture. This phone became a crucial piece of evidence, leading police to unravel a complex mystery that was far more sinister than anyone had initially suspected. The investigation into Paige's disappearance led to more questions than answers. What prompted a responsible mother and successful businesswoman to lead a secret life? And how was this double life connected to her vanishing? These questions took center stage in the investigation, adding a new layer of mystery. To get to the bottom of things, detectives analyzed Paige's cell phone, found in her car, and examined her contacts and calls from the hours leading up to her disappearance. The last call made from her phone was on June 28th around 9 p.m. This analysis led investigators to identify 7 suspects, one of whom was Lester Ralph Jones. Jones's criminal record raised red flags, particularly his history of violence against women and a previous kidnapping conviction that earned him a 5-year prison sentence. However, it wasn't the only concerning aspect. Jones's white car matched the description of the vehicle seen by Carol, Paige's friend. Carol shared a crucial detail with detectives. Paige had once approached her car, only to find a white car blocking her driveway. Enraged, Paige got behind the wheel to turn around, but the cars collided. The unknown driver quickly fled the scene. Investigators suspected that Lester might have been obsessed with Paige and was stalking her after discovering that he had tried to book an appointment with her for intimate services on the day before she vanished. When questioned, Lester denied any involvement in her disappearance and provided fingerprints and DNA samples. However, a search of his home turned up several incriminating items, including a prepaid phone, wigs, Viagra, a sheet with an escort services phone number, and women's lingerie in various sizes. The prepaid phone caught the investigators' attention due to suspicious calls made to Paige's phone on the day she disappeared. Lester initially denied owning a second phone, which proved to be a lie. Using the phone's packaging found at his home, police traced the purchase to a supermarket on North Avenue. The store's security footage showed Lester buying the phone, which he refused to acknowledge when confronted with the evidence. Lester Jones became the main suspect in Paige's disappearance, but the police couldn't find enough concrete evidence to charge him. They continued to investigate and search for Paige's body, hoping to find proof of his guilt. However, the case stalled for several years, leaving Paige's family and loved ones in a state of unbearable grief. As time passed, the search seemed increasingly futile, and the hope of finding Paige alive began to fade. In 2012, a hiker stumbled upon human remains in a ravine in Delta County, surprisingly close to where Paige's personal belongings had been found 5 years prior. Investigators were nearly certain the body was that of a young mother, and DNA testing confirmed it was indeed Paige. Unfortunately, her story ended in tragedy. The condition of the body made it impossible to determine the exact cause of death, but it was clear she had suffered a brutal beating with multiple broken bones, particularly in her face. It was concluded that her injuries ultimately led to her death. The discovery of Paige's body added a horrific layer to the story. It's believed that her body was buried, but years of soil erosion eventually brought it to the surface, which may explain why it wasn't found sooner. The discovery led to a breakthrough in Lester Ralph Jones's case, which had stalled for years. In November 2014, he was charged with kidnapping, first-degree murder, and second-degree murder. The trial finally began in July 2016 and lasted 22 days. Prosecutors claimed that Lester's frustration over being unable to see Paige, combined with his history of violence against women, motivated the crime. The prosecution's key witness, Lester's ex-wife Lisa, testified about his violent past. She described how Lester kidnapped and threatened to kill her at gunpoint in the late 1990s after she ended their relationship. On one occasion, he attacked her and her partner, shooting the latter in the head. A month later, Lester made another threat, warning her that she would be thrown into a lake. Lisa managed to escape and contacted the police, leading to Lester's arrest on charges of kidnapping and assault. In contrast, Lester's defense attorneys argued that the police had wrongly accused an innocent man and suggested that other clients of Paige's may have had motives for the crime. However, they failed to provide convincing evidence linking anyone else to the murder. Lester's current wife testified, stating that although her husband used an escort service, her faith prevented her from leaving him. Nevertheless, she could not provide an alibi for him and identified him in a supermarket surveillance video where he bought a disposable phone. Lester's first trial ended in a mistrial on September 9, 2016, when the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict. However, the district attorney was convinced of Lester's guilt and continued to investigate and re-examine the evidence. After several weeks, on November 21, 2016, the jury finally reached a verdict, finding Lester guilty of all charges related to Paige's death. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without parole. Lester's defense team appealed the sentence, but an appeals court panel upheld the conviction and sentence in June 2022. Paige's funeral was held on April 28, 2012. Her obituary remembered her as a beautiful and radiant woman with a smile that lit up the room. Her tragic death has had a lasting impact on her family and friends, leaving her 3 children without their loving mother and support. The tragic case of Paige captured the nation's attention and spanned many years, but through the unwavering dedication of law enforcement relatives, justice was finally served. Lester Ralph Jones was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, ensuring he can no longer harm innocent people. Paige's courageous story stands as a powerful reminder of the significance of persisting in the pursuit of justice, no matter how long and arduous the journey may be. Her memory will forever be cherished by those who knew and loved her. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Lynn Keel. Lynn and Elizabeth Keel had been married for over 20 years. Lynn worked as a truck driver, while Elizabeth was employed by Microbac Laboratories. They lived in a secluded house in Nash County, North Carolina. On January 1, 2006, Elizabeth slipped on the icy steps outside their house and fell, hitting her head on the concrete corner. The injury was fatal, and her life was tragically cut short. After a year, Lynn began to rebuild his life after a devastating event. He made a career change, leaving his job as a truck driver to pursue a new path in real estate. In 2007, his real estate work brought him to Latin America, where he met Diana, a 26-year-old woman from Bogota, Colombia. Diana was not only attractive, but also had a kind heart and was a dedicated single mother to her young daughter. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and Diana was drawn to the idea of a better life in America. She moved to the United States to be with Lynn, and they settled into his home in Nash County. This was the same house where Lynn's wife, Elizabeth Keel, had tragically died in an accident about a year earlier. Before long, Lynn and Diana got married, and soon they welcomed a son named Max into their family. Diana graduated from Nash Community College in 2017 and began working as an emergency room nurse at Wilson Medical Center the same year. In the early years of her relationship, everything seemed normal, but over time, things took a turn for the worse. According to Diana, her partner Lynn became controlling and verbally abusive, often speaking harshly to her. By 2019, Diana's daughter Laura had turned 18 and was attending the University of North Carolina at Wilmington after graduating from Southern Nash High School. Meanwhile, Diana's 10-year-old son Max was living with his parents. Diana's colleagues and patients at Wilson Medical Center held her in high regard, respecting and admiring her both personally and professionally. On March 7, 2019, Diana's mother, Esperanza Prada, who lived in Colombia, received an unexpected message from Diana that read, "Mom, I love you very much." Esperanza was disturbed by this message because she was aware that Diana was miserable in her marriage and longed to get a divorce, but Diana's fear of her husband prevented her from taking the intervention. 3 days later, Laura tweeted a plea for help, saying her mom Diana was missing and asking others to spread the word if they saw or heard anything. On the same day, Laura contacted the medical center where her mother, Diana, worked, but none of Diana's co-workers had seen or heard from her in the past 48 hours. An employee at the medical center notified the police, requesting a welfare check on Diana. The co-worker informed the dispatcher that Diana had been unreachable for 2 days. When the police officer arrived at the Keel family home, Lynn Keel was present. It was unusual that his wife's disappearance had been reported to the police by her co-workers, rather than by him. Lynn told the officer that he had last seen Diana 2 days prior, on March 8th, when she left the house. The presence of her car still parked outside the house raised further suspicions. Lynn was summoned for further questioning. When interrogated, 57-year-old Keel stated that his wife had gone out to run errands but never came back. He claimed she sometimes left for several days at a time, but his explanation was not believable. He was released without being charged. Meanwhile, Diana was reported missing, prompting the police to launch a search for her. The investigation revealed that Diana hadn't used her cell phone or bank cards in several days, which was a disturbing sign. The house where this incident took place is located in a secluded area, far from any neighbors who could provide valuable information to the police. Despite this, detectives discovered that on the morning of March 8th, Diana and Lynn had a loud and intense argument on their front porch. On the day Diana went missing, a courier delivered a package addressed to her, making him the last person to see her, aside from her husband, Lynn Keel. After speaking with Diana's co-workers, the police were convinced that she wouldn't abandon her 10-year-old son and flee. The only reason Diana didn't divorce Lynn was her fear of losing custody of her child. Everyone the detective interviewed suspected only one person of being involved in Diana's disappearance: her husband, Lynn Keel. Early in the investigation, a troubling discovery was made. 2 years prior to Diana's disappearance, Lynn had taken out a life insurance policy on her worth over $1 million, with him as the sole beneficiary. A domestic dispute had taken place at the Keel house in 2008, although no further action was taken. Just 2 days into the investigation, the police received a disturbing call. A North Carolina Department of Transportation employee reported finding something on Pokes Hole Road. A man called the police to report something suspicious in the woods, saying he wasn't sure what it was, possibly a body, but he didn't know how far in it was. The dispatcher asked if it was at the end of the road, and the caller confirmed he would wait there. Tragically, what the caller had stumbled upon was Diana's body, which appeared to have been there since the day she went missing. It turned out the caller was a worker who had been checking an illegal dumping site when he made the discovery. The body was found on Pokes Hole Road, a dead-end street surrounded by farmland. Considering the location was 30 miles from Diana's home, it was fortunate that the police found her body when they did. If not for the worker's discovery, it could have taken the police much longer to find her. At the police station, the investigators questioned Lynn about Diana's disappearance. He stuck to his story, claiming that she would often leave for several days, but always come back. However, this contradicted what her co-workers, relatives, and friends had said. It was common knowledge that Lynn Keel exerted total control over his wife's life, even preventing her from socializing with friends. Despite the inconsistencies in his alibi, the police released him pending the outcome of the autopsy. 2 days after the body was found, authorities confirmed that it was indeed Diana Keel. Her death was devastating for her children, family, and friends. The medical examiner's report revealed the shocking details of Diana's death. The autopsy showed that she suffered from severe skull fractures and multiple sharp wounds on the left side of her face and neck. Notably, some of these injuries occurred after her death, suggesting that the perpetrator may have had a personal vendetta against her. When police arrived to arrest Lynn Keel and search his home, they found that he had already fled. A nationwide wanted list was issued, warning that he might be driving a gold-colored pickup truck and that he could be dangerous. After being questioned at the police station, Lynn Keel drove his 10-year-old son to his parents' home, took his father's car, and escaped. A search warrant was issued for the home Lynn shared with his wife Diana, and authorities seized a collection of firearms, including rifles, pistols, and revolvers, as well as swords, a machete, and multiple knives. During the search, authorities also found 2 pages from a diary belonging to Diana's 18-year-old daughter in a Dodge Ram owned by Lynn Keel. When asked about the contents of the diary pages, the sheriff declined to comment, stating that he did not feel comfortable sharing the information. The search for Lynn Keel, Diana's husband, continued as his whereabouts remained unknown after leaving the state. Although the sheriff's office received tips about his truck's location in Texas and Florida, no further information about his capture was confirmed. Stone requested the public's help to look out for Keel's pickup truck with the listed license plate number at local motels and hotels. On March 17, 2019, 5 days after Diana's body was found, Arizona State Police arrested Lynn Keel, 34 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. At the time of his arrest, he had a large amount of cash and canned goods, allegedly planning to escape into Mexico. Following his arrest, Lynn Keel was flown back to Nash County, where he was charged with his wife's murder and kidnapping. Investigators believed Diana was still alive when she was put into her own SUV, driven into the woods, and left to die. Forensic evidence found in the bedroom of their home confirmed that the attack on Diana took place there. After abducting Diana, Keel went to a remote area and later visited a local Walmart to purchase cleaning supplies, which he used to try to conceal evidence of the crime. The heinous nature of the crime, combined with Keel's attempted escape from justice, sparked widespread media coverage at the local, state, and national levels. As a result, the public defender requested a change of venue to select a jury pool outside of Nash County, away from the intense media scrutiny. Lynn Keel, 59, pleaded no contest to the charges in October 2021, avoiding a long trial. By doing so, Keel accepted responsibility for the crimes. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. Keel's defense team requested that the judge consider his deteriorating health, specifically his kidney failure, and the fact that he has been in prison for 2 years during the sentencing. However, Diana's mother addressed the court, remembering the tragic reason her daughter was killed. She took the opportunity to convey a crucial message to women who may be in similar situations, urging them to leave abusive partners and not stay in harmful relationships. Diana Alejandra Keel's family expressed their gratitude to law enforcement for capturing and bringing to justice Lynn Keel, the suspect in Diana's murder. It remains unclear what motivated Lynn Keel to commit the crime, but it's possible he was driven by his discovery that Diana planned to meet with a lawyer to initiate divorce proceedings and was also aware of a life insurance policy worth over $1 million. Lynn Keel received a prison sentence of 32 to 41 years. However, the investigation didn't end there. Authorities also looked into the death of Lynn Keel's first wife, Elizabeth, which was initially ruled an accident. But her family had always questioned the events that led to her death. Elizabeth Keel's body may be exhumed if new evidence arises. Dr. John Butts, a veteran medical examiner, only considers exhumation when there are unanswered questions. While some initially accidental deaths were later deemed murders, there's been no new information in Keel's case in 2 years, suggesting no reason to reopen the investigation. However, new details may emerge in the future. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Jodie Sanderholm. Jodie Leanne Sanderholm was born on September 26, 1987, in Arkansas City to parents Brian and Cindy Sanderholm. As the third of 3 children, she had an older brother named Jason and an older sister named Jennifer. From an early age, Jodie had a passion for dance, which played a significant role in her life. However, she also prioritized her education and excelled in her studies. Jodie's academic achievements were impressive, earning her one of 4 valedictorian spots in her graduating class. During her high school years, she was an active member of the National Honor Society, received recognition as a Kansas State Scholar, and was awarded the Outstanding Physics Student of the Year award. Additionally, she was captain of the Ark City High School dance team for 2 years and an instructor for both Ark City Dance and the Universal Dance Association. After graduating, Jodie attended Cowley College, where she studied pre-pharmacy and was part of the Cowley Tigerette dance line. On the morning of January 5, 2007, Jodie drove to college for a dance rehearsal that was scheduled to end at 10:45 a.m. After the rehearsal, she planned to return home. However, when her mother, Cindy, called her cell phone multiple times, Jodie didn't answer, which was unusual for her. Being a responsible and communicative person, Jodie always kept in touch with her family, and her mother's repeated calls went unanswered, leaving her with a sense of unease. Cindy left work early to check on Jodie, who should have returned from dance rehearsal. But when Cindy arrived home, she noticed Jodie's car was missing, which only added to her anxiety. Entering the house, Cindy realized Jodie was not there. Her dance uniform, which she usually washed after rehearsal, was nowhere to be found. The shower stall was dry, suggesting Jodie hadn't showered after dance class. Cindy soon discovered that Jodie had not contacted her father or sister Jennifer either. Jodie had a noon appointment, but she didn't show up. Cindy and Brian began calling Jodie's friends, hoping someone had seen her. But none of them had since the morning rehearsal ended. The dance team was scheduled to perform at a basketball game that evening, and Jodie, as the choreographer, wouldn't have missed it voluntarily. However, she didn't show up. By 6 p.m., Cindy and Brian were still unable to locate Jodie, so they contacted the police and reported her missing. The sheriff's office quickly created flyers with Jodie's description and began investigating her last known whereabouts, issuing an APB on her vehicle. On January 6th, Jodie's best friend, Lori Leglighter, whom she had known since high school and had danced with, provided crucial information to the police. The two friends had also attended Cali College together, where they studied dance. Lori told the police that she had left her job at Sirloin Stockade in Arkansas City around 10 p.m. on Tuesday, January 2nd, and had noticed a light blue car driving by the restaurant multiple times as she departed. Lori noticed a car following her on her way home, which made her feel uneasy. To test her suspicion, she turned onto different streets, but the car behind her kept following. Frightened, she drove to the local police station and parked, hoping the stalker would leave her alone. When she didn't see the car anymore, she drove home. However, she soon saw the car again, so she returned to the police station parking lot and waited in her car for a while before driving home. Lori initially thought it was a prank, but she didn't report the incident to the police. On January 5th, Lori and her friend Jodie arrived at the college for a dance team rehearsal. Lori recognized the same light blue car that had been following her, and she saw the driver, 23-year-old Justin Thurber, who was a local resident. Although Lori didn't know Justin personally, she had seen him with his older brother and friends before. After practice, Lori and Jodie planned to meet up later, but Jodie never showed up. It was then revealed that several dance team members had also seen Justin lurking around the college campus that week. In the initial stages of the investigation into Jodie's disappearance, police searched the city thoroughly but couldn't find her car within the first 24 hours. The city of Arkansas is surrounded by open fields and wooded areas, making it a challenging task. To aid their search, authorities brought in a fixed-wing aircraft to scour the region from above. They hoped to spot Jodie's car, which was larger and easier to detect than a person. The police investigation revealed that the last signal from Jodie's cell phone was received from a tower near the Kaw Wildlife Area, a vast wooded region along the Arkansas River. At this point, only one suspect had emerged, Justin Eugene Justin, identified by Lori Leglighter and other members of the dance group. Notably, Justin was already familiar to the police due to a prior incident in 2004 when he was charged with illegal possession of banned substances despite his young age. Justin was sentenced but didn't serve time in prison. Instead, he was released. However, just 3 months later, he was arrested again for stealing in Probate Nation, violating his probation. In October 2005, he was charged with disorderly conduct. 3 months after that, he was arrested for petty theft and found with illegal drugs. Then, on December 31, 2006, just 6 days before Jodie's disappearance, Justin was arrested for theft once more. After posting a $3,000 bail, Justin was freed on New Year's Eve. The very next day, January 1st, he pretended to be a police officer, causing a public disturbance. When the real police arrived, Justin claimed to have chest pain and was taken to the hospital rather than the police station. It's unclear why he wasn't arrested after being discharged from the hospital, and it's also unclear how he managed to avoid consequences for his actions. A family tie to Cowley County Police might have influenced events. On January 6th, an officer spotted Justin's Cadillac at his parents' house and initiated a conversation. Justin's father invited the officer in. When questioned about his previous day's whereabouts, Justin said he drove to Winfield, 13 miles outside Arkansas City that morning. In Winfield, Justin met up with a friend and two acquaintances of his friend, whom he didn't know well. The four of them then drove around the countryside in one of the acquaintances' cars until it became stuck on a dirt road near Cedar Vale. Justin claimed that he proceeded to walk towards Arkansas City, a 30-mile journey from Cedar Vale. After 6 hours of walking, he grew tired and called his father to come pick him up. Justin's father backed his son's story, saying he'd picked him up near Cali State Fishing Lake, where Justin was wet and dirty. The officer found the story unconvincing, but lacked evidence to charge him, so let him go. That evening, police questioned Alexis Schwartzel, who had recently ended her 3-year relationship with Justin Thurber. When informed about the investigation into Jodie Sanderholm's disappearance, Alexis was shocked. She revealed that Justin had once told her that he had been watching Jodie since he was 13 years old, often sneaking peeks at her while she swam in her backyard pool, and even peered through her bedroom window, waiting for her to change clothes. Alexis explained that she had broken up with Justin due to his abusive behavior and increasing strange tendencies. She recalled that during intimate moments, he would choke her until she lost consciousness. Moreover, he would ask her to fight him, as it was the only way he could become aroused. The police grew increasingly suspicious of Justin's involvement in Jodie's disappearance, despite lacking concrete evidence. Nonetheless, Justin was arrested later that evening, on January 6th. Detective Eric Mata arrested Justin Thurber for bail violation and criminal trespassing because Justin was found on the college campus, which the detective believed he was not supposed to be on. Justin requested to speak with his lawyer when arrested. Around the same time, police officers arrived at Justin's parents' house with a search warrant. During the search, the officers took Justin's shoes, which were wet and drying on a towel. His father had helped him clean the mud from the shoes. The clothes he wore when his father picked him up were also found, but Justin had already washed them. On January 7th, rugged terrain search teams combed the Kaw wildlife area for Jodie Sanderholm, finding shoe prints matching Justin's and smaller ones. They stopped for the night, resuming the search the next day. En route home, searchers checked Cowley County State Fishing Lake, recalling Justin was wet when picked up by his father. Near a public restroom, investigators discovered several important pieces of evidence. This included a muddy tire track, shoe prints with mud on them, and a portable toilet containing a handwritten note addressed to the parents of Jodie Sanderholm. In another toilet, they found dance shoes and a flip-flop sandal that matched the footprints found at the Kaw wildlife area. Further searches yielded a collection of personal belongings, including cut-off sweatshorts, a wallet with Jodie's driver's license and social security card, a black leotard, a tigerette jacket with her first name on it, a vehicle floor mat, and a car seat cushion. Search efforts focused on Cowley County State Fishing Lake and the Kaw wildlife area. On January 9th, specialists used sonar to locate Jodie's submerged car. Tragically, her body was found later that day, hidden under debris. DNA evidence linked Justin Thurber to the car and body, but water in the car likely destroyed additional evidence. Forensic investigators found crucial evidence after many hours of work. A hair on Jodie's car seat was matched to Justin Thurber through mitochondrial DNA testing. Private DNA expert Barbara Leal analyzed samples from Jodie's arm and chest. It was possible that Justin was involved. Cell tower data showed Jodie's and Justin's phones were in the same area simultaneously. This was corroborated by Jodie's friend Lori, who saw Justin in the college parking lot that day. security footage confirmed Laurie's account, showing Justin following Jodie in his Cadillac. Investigators believed that Justin followed Jodie from college to her home, where he attacked her after she retrieved letters from the mailbox. A shoe print identical to Justin's sneakers was found by the mailbox, supporting this theory. Footprints matching Justin's shoes were discovered at the Kaw Wildlife Area, and smaller prints matched Jodie's shoes found at the lake, along with her other belongings. In the preserve, searchers found footprints of Justin and Jodie side by side, indicating they walked together at one point. However, Jodie's footprints stopped and Justin's continued deeper into the woods, so he carried her further on his own. His shoe prints were also found near where the body was discovered. Moreover, the three people Justin claimed to have been with on the day of Jodie's disappearance denied his story, revealing that his alibi about getting stuck near Cedar Vale was a lie. The police drove Justin to Cedar Vale to verify his alibi, but he couldn't pinpoint the location where he claimed his car was stuck. Back at the police station, Justin agreed to take a polygraph test and requested that his relative, Chad Monroe, who worked for the Cowley County Sheriff's Office, be present during the questioning. The collected evidence was sufficient to indict Justin Thurber. Despite his denial of guilt, the judge set his bail at $1 million. Justin's lawyers attempted to argue that he was mentally incompetent, but their efforts were unsuccessful. Given that Justin had graduated from high school and attended college, the judge deemed the defense's claim of mental retardation unproven. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy testified in court, describing the brutal nature of Jodie's last hours. Her body and face were covered in bruises and abrasions, with clear signs of strangulation on her neck, which was ultimately determined to be the cause of her death. Here's what the medical examiner found during the autopsy. The crime was driven by sexual desire and involved an object, a stick. To give you an idea of what happened at the wildlife area without going into detail, it's worth noting that not all violent criminals are as brutal as Justin. At Justin's trial, 7 women, including his ex-girlfriend, testified that they had been stalked by him. One of these women was a co-worker who was so afraid of Justin that she had to have a police officer escort her to her car after work because she had seen him waiting for her earlier. He had left a disturbing gift on her car, a rose, and a note saying he was interested in her. Multiple witnesses reported seeing Jodie Sanderholm's car on January 5, 2007. Carrie Morris, a friend of Jodie's, saw Jodie sitting in the passenger seat of her car as they drove past each other in Arkansas City around noon. Morris noticed that the driver was a large man. She tried to call Jodie's cell phone, but there was no answer. Later that day, around 3 p.m., 2 other women reported seeing a car that looked similar to Jodie's on a dirt road south of Arkansas City. One of the women identified the driver as Justin in court. After a trial, the jury delivered a unanimous verdict on February 17, 2009, finding Justin guilty on all counts. They recommended that he be sentenced to death. Justin's lawyer attempted to negotiate a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, but Jodie's family opposed it. The judge ultimately sentenced Justin to death by lethal injection in March 2009. In 2008, Kansas expanded its stalking laws, increasing police authority and the definition of stalking behaviors. Since his sentencing, Justin Thurber has continued to appeal the court's decision. His lawyers are now arguing that he has a mental disability, which they claim is supported by evidence from 2018. However, the Kansas Supreme Court has put his death sentence on hold, citing a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that prohibits the execution of individuals with developmental disabilities, even if they are mild. Justin was found competent at his original trial. Years later, Jodie's mother, Cindy Sanderholm, attended a hearing and was outraged that Justin had written letters to girls while in prison, seeing it as proof of his competency. Justin is currently appealing a death sentence, and a 2020 state law gives him the opportunity to request an attorney to assist with post-conviction DNA testing from the Cowley County District Court. This is significant because, despite it being 16 years since Jodie Sanderholm's murder, the case is still not fully resolved. Additionally, the speaker believes that Jodie pleaded for her life, but Justin did not spare her, denying her a second chance. Kansas reinstated the death penalty in 1994, but no one has been executed since then. In fact, the last execution in Kansas took place in 1965. Since the reinstatement, 10 people, including Justin, have been sentenced to death, but none of their sentences have been carried out. According to Adam Fan and Steele, spokesperson for the Kansas Department of Corrections, there are no plans for future executions. Jennifer Aldridge, Jodie's sister, finds it surprising that Kansas reinstated the death penalty over 20 years ago without a plan for carrying out executions. She believes this issue should have been discussed when the penalty was reinstated. Even if Justin's death sentence is upheld, it is likely that it will not be carried out. Justin Thurber is currently being held at the maximum security El Dorado Correctional Facility in Butler County, Kansas. According to a 2014 report by the Kansas Legislative Post-Audit Committee, it costs almost $49,000 per year to keep an inmate in administrative segregation at El Dorado. Furthermore, it's not just the cost of housing a death row inmate, it's also 4 times more expensive to prosecute a case where the death penalty is sought by the prosecution. The Sanderholms feel that paying taxes is an additional unfair burden on top of the emotional pain they're already enduring as they wait for justice in their daughter Jodie's case. Brian Sanderholm explained, "Every week, when I see the taxes deducted from my paycheck, it's a painful reminder that I'm supporting the person responsible for our suffering." His wife Cindy echoed his sentiments, saying, "He deserves the maximum punishment, which is what the law intended. We need to reform the law so it can be enforced effectively." If you were in our shoes, what would you want to happen to someone who harmed your child? Cynthia Ann Sanderholm, Jodie's mother, sadly passed away on December 2, 2022, at the age of 63. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Ashley Renee Lyons. Ashley Renee Lyons was born on July 21, 1985, in Scott County. She was active in the FFA program at Scott County High School, graduating in 2003. Ashley's brother Chris shared her passion for repairing cars, but her true interest was her boyfriend Roger McBee. After they broke up, Ashley discovered she was pregnant with his child. On January 7, 2004, Ashley learned she was having a boy and was overjoyed. She told her mom and brother about her plans to meet Roger and his parents at a restaurant in Stamping Ground. Despite her mom's offer to lend her car, Ashley opted to drive herself, saying she wouldn't be gone long. As she departed, her mom remembered her final words, "I love you, Mom. I'll be back soon." That evening, Chris received a call from Roger, who couldn't meet with Ashley and had tried calling her but didn't get an answer. When Ashley didn't return home by 8 p.m. and didn't answer her mother's calls, Carol started to worry. She called Roger's mother and learned the meeting had been canceled, sparking a frantic search for Ashley. Chris and his father searched for her, eventually checking Scott County Park, one of Ashley's favorite places. Ashley often visited Scott County Park with her boyfriend Roger, and later she would feed the ducks there on her own. The park is about 10 miles from Stamping Ground. One day, Chris and his father were driving around the park when they saw a car that looked like Ashley's. As they got closer, they realized it was indeed her car, with the engine running and the lights on. When they approached the car, Chris saw that the driver's side window was down, and Ashley was sitting inside with her head down. She was wearing a seatbelt but was unresponsive. Chris opened the door, shook her, and hoped she was just sleeping. But when he looked at his hand, he saw blood. He immediately called 911. Sadly, by the time Chris called for help, Ashley had already passed away, and the doctors couldn't save her. The devastating news soon reached Ashley's mom, who was overwhelmed with grief. The investigators arrived at the crime scene, and since Ashley's death was a result of a crime, Her body remained in the car until the evidence was collected. At the scene, investigators found the car's engine running, the heater and radio on, and the driver's side window rolled down. A quick examination revealed the cause of Ashley's death. 3 9mm shell casings lay on the ground beside the car, and Ashley had sustained gunshot wounds to the head and neck. Despite a thorough search, the police were unable to find the murder weapon in the park. The unusual circumstances of the shooting suggested that Ashley was familiar with her killer. The fact that the window was down on a chilly night was suspicious, and the position of Ashley's body indicated that she had not attempted to defend herself or escape. From these clues, investigators concluded that Ashley knew her killer. The crime scene revealed that Ashley's wallet and phone were still in the car, leading investigators to quickly rule out robbery as a motive. The car's interior held a poignant clue: scattered ultrasound pictures, which Ashley had likely been looking at in the final moments of her life. At 5 months pregnant, Ashley's murder also claimed the life of her unborn son, Landon. This heinous crime was unprecedented in Scott County, and the community demanded that the police find the perpetrator. Ashley's parents told investigators she planned to meet Roger, the father of her unborn child, on the day she died. Roger was distraught, overwhelmed by emotion, and couldn't imagine who could harm his ex-girlfriend and their child. Investigators brought him in for further questioning. Roger told investigators he canceled a restaurant meeting with Ashley due to other meetings. He called her twice, but she didn't answer, so he called her home and asked Chris to have her call him back. Roger's account matched Chris's previous statement about Ashley's plans. Carol defended Roger, calling him a nice guy who got along with her family and not believe he'd harm Ashley and Landon. As investigators searched for clues, Ashley's family sought answers. Carol found her daughter's diary detailing daily life. One name stood out: Dina Williams, a classmate from a poor background, often wearing the same clothes. Initially, Ashley and Dina were friends, but their friendship deteriorated due to Dina's jealousy. Dina envied Ashley's possessions and relationships, including her romance with Roger. Ashley documented their multiple fights in her diary. Carol discovered this information from Ashley's diary and became suspicious of Dina's involvement in Ashley's death. After Ashley and Roger broke up, Dina quickly started dating Roger, which raised Carol's suspicions. Furthermore, Ashley's pregnancy with Roger's child might have motivated Dina to eliminate her as a rival for Roger's attention. Carol handed over the diary to the investigators, believing it held crucial evidence. The investigators also found Ashley's descriptions of her tumultuous relationship with Dina to be revealing. As a result, Dina was brought in for questioning at the police station, where she denied any role in Ashley's death. Dina, who worked at a bank, told investigators that she had an alibi for the evening of the crime. She was at an office party. Although she openly expressed her dislike for Ashley, especially because of her pregnancy, the lack of sentiment towards Ashley's death wasn't enough to detain her, so she was let go. The ballistic examination results revealed that the shooter was likely around 5 feet 10 inches tall. Since Dina was only 5 feet 5 inches tall, it seemed unlikely that she was the perpetrator. However, her twin brother Thomas, who matched the estimated height, had previously inquired about inducing a miscarriage, according to rumors. Moreover, people claimed that Thomas would do anything his sister asked. The investigators questioned Thomas, but he denied any involvement, and without evidence, they had no choice but to release him. Investigators' search for clues continued as Ashley's family prepared for the funeral, grappling with the unimaginable pain of losing 2 loved ones. During the autopsy, the fetus was removed from Ashley's body. Ashley and Landon were laid to rest together, a heart-wrenching gesture. The fact that the perpetrator remained at large added to the family's devastation. Ashley's parents offered a $3,000 reward, later increased to $5,000, for any information that could help catch their daughter's killer. This led to a flood of calls from people who thought they might have helpful information. One call in particular stood out. A woman who lived near the park where Ashley was shot reported that she might have seen the perpetrator. She described seeing someone running out of the park, jumping over a fence, and then getting into a red Chevrolet pickup truck that was waiting with its engine running. The truck sped away soon after. This crucial eyewitness account suggested that there might be more than one person involved in Ashley's murder, and that investigators should be looking for at least 2 suspects. The discovery of the red pickup truck led everyone who knew Ashley to suspect Roger, since he owned a similar vehicle. The police promptly took Roger's truck into custody and conducted a thorough search, but unfortunately, they found no incriminating evidence inside. The investigators decided to re-interview Dina and her brother Thomas. They started by questioning Thomas, who initially denied any involvement. However, after learning that a witness had placed Roger's pickup truck at the crime scene, Thomas became more cooperative. When asked if he knew who killed Ashley, he quickly replied that it was Roger McBeath. Thomas eventually made a deal with the investigators, trading his cooperation for a lighter sentence. He confessed to providing the gun to Roger, who then used it to shoot Ashley. Thomas also revealed that Roger had disposed of the weapon in Elorn Creek. After an extensive 6-hour dive search, the police finally found the gun, which was later confirmed through ballistics testing to be the murder weapon. The investigators initially suspected Dina of being the shooter, but they soon ruled her out due to a discrepancy in height. However, during further questioning, Dina revealed that she was the getaway driver on the night of the crime. This led to the arrests of Roger McBeath, Dina Williams, and her twin brother Thomas. It was clear that Roger was motivated by his desire to avoid becoming a father. Ashley, on the other hand, was excited to become a mother and had the full support of her family. Roger devised a sinister plan to eliminate the problem. He lured Ashley to Scott County Park under the pretense of a meeting with his parents at a nearby restaurant. Dina drove him to the park, where he approached Ashley's car with a gun. As Ashley rolled down her window to show him ultrasound pictures, Roger shot her 3 times, killing her and their unborn child. He then fled the scene in the pickup truck, escaping with Dina's help. The perpetrators stopped and got rid of the gun by throwing it into the river. Roger McBeath denied any involvement. Thomas Dina, on the other hand, was sentenced to 7 years in prison for his role in the crime. As part of his plea deal, Dina admitted to accepting $11,000 from Roger to harm Ashley and cause her to have a miscarriage. Although the plan was never carried out, Dina agreed to give Roger the gun used in the murder, according to court records. In 2005, Dina Williams pleaded guilty as part of a plea deal. The prosecutors recommended that she serve a total of 20 years in prison, making her eligible for parole after serving 17 years of her sentence. Prosecutors planned to call witnesses who would testify that Dina wanted Ashley dead, conspired with Roger to poison her, and even offered $1,000 to cause a miscarriage. When these plans failed, they turned to more extreme measures. Dina claimed her public defender warned her she'd likely be found guilty. She was distressed, saying she pleaded guilty to something she didn't do. Dina admitted driving Roger to the park, but said she drove around the subdivision while they met and later returned to pick him up. During her drive, a woman heard 3 gunshots, but at the time, she didn't know what they were. Dina, who was involved in the events, stated that Roger had planned something without her knowledge. Later, he called Ashley on his phone, telling her he loved her and was sorry he missed meeting her at the park. The jury listened to a recording of this message during Roger's trial. According to Dina, when she left the park, Roger never mentioned that Ashley was dead. Dina also claimed that she didn't report the incident to the police because she was afraid of Roger, who she said was abusive towards her. Dina Williams said she was terrified of Roger, who threatened to kill her. She expressed regret and sympathy for the Ashley family. However, Roger's parents disputed her testimony, calling her a compulsive liar who acted impulsively. They accused Dina of being jealous of Ashley and taking a plea deal to avoid responsibility. Dina was sentenced to 20 years in prison, released on parole in 2021, and claimed she was young and influenced by Roger at the time of the crime, denying knowledge of his relationship with the victim. During her time in prison, Dina participated in various rehabilitation programs, including anger management, legal aid training, horticulture, and Braille transcription courses. Roger's initial murder conviction was overturned in 2009 by the Kentucky Supreme Court due to illegally obtained evidence. The court ruled that prosecutors had used evidence from an unauthorized jail informant who had engaged in casual conversations with Roger, hoping to elicit incriminating statements. The informant had exceeded his authorized role, leading to the conviction being overturned. Roger later pleaded guilty to being an accomplice to murder and tampering with evidence, and was sentenced to 42 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 16 years. He also received a concurrent 5-year sentence for evidence tampering. At his 2023 parole hearing, Roger expressed remorse for his actions, stating that he didn't deserve parole and was truly sorry for what he had done. He wanted to apologize to the family of Ashley Lyons, the mother of his child, whom he had loved deeply. Although he acknowledged his daily regret, his parole eligibility was declined and the hearing was discontinued. Roger remains in prison. In memory of Ashley, an angel garden with ceramic angel statues has been created at Scott County Park, where she tragically died. After Ashley's death, Carol and her husband Buford Lyons worked to pass a law that recognizes violence against a pregnant woman as 2 separate crimes, one against the woman herself and another against her unborn child. This law was passed at both the state and federal levels. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katie Sepic. Katie Sepic's mom described her as an outgoing, vibrant, and intelligent 22-year-old. Born and raised in Carlsbad, New Mexico, Katie was the eldest of 3 siblings. She earned a business degree from New Mexico State University and was planning to pursue her MBA in the fall. In addition to her studies, Katie worked as a waitress at a local Mexican restaurant. During her time at the university, she met Joe Bischoff, and their initial friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. Katie confided in her mom, Diane, about her happiness with Joe and her desire to build a future together. Months later, Joe proposed to Katie with a diamond ring, making her dreams seem within reach. However, after they graduated in the summer of 2003, their relationship began to struggle. They faced challenges when Katie decided to continue her studies, while Joe returned to his parents' home in Gallup, New Mexico, a small city 350 miles from Las Cruces. Katie was devastated when Joe had to leave, making their long-distance relationship extremely difficult. Despite the challenges, they found ways to reunite occasionally. One such opportunity arose on Labor Day weekend in 2003, when Joe visited Katie and Katie was ecstatic. However, their reunion took a devastating turn. On Saturday, August 30th, 2003, Katie enjoyed a fun night out with Joe and their friends, visiting several bars before ending up at a local house party. But after that, Katie vanished. The next day, Katie's mother, Diane, received a life-changing phone call. Diane recalled the moment she discovered her daughter was missing. She described how, on August 31st, 2003, her family had woken up to a beautiful day filled with friends and family as they prepared to celebrate Labor Day weekend with a cookout. Then, at 2:15 that afternoon, the phone had rung, Veronica asking if they had talked to Katie that day. Veronica, Katie's roommate, was frantically calling everyone who knew Katie, trying to find out if they had seen her. She had already contacted all of Katie's friends and even checked with local hospitals, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. According to Veronica, Katie had left a party alone the previous night. Veronica and her boyfriend Joe had stayed behind and fallen asleep at the party house. They assumed Katie had gone home, But when they woke up the next morning, Katie was nowhere to be found. Katie's family immediately notified the police and filed a missing persons report. Shortly after, a disturbing discovery was made near a desert landfill. A deceased female body, partially undressed and exhibiting clear signs of a recent and intentional murder. The police were called to the scene and found no identification near the body. However, they could tell that the body had been there for no more than a day. The victim appeared to be between 20 and 25 years old, and the fact that she was naked from the waist down suggested that the motive behind the crime was likely sexual. The victim's body showed signs of strangulation, leading investigators to initially suspect it as the cause of death. Upon closer inspection, they noticed no signs of struggle near the body, indicating that she likely died elsewhere and was moved to the desert landfill to delay discovery. Further examination revealed burn marks on her arms and back, suggesting the perpetrator attempted to dispose of the body or destroy evidence by setting her on fire. The police soon connected the dots between Katie's disappearance and the unidentified body. Katie's father was tasked with identifying the body at the morgue, an experience that left him and his wife, Gianna, shattered. The body was their daughter, Katie. The police's first step was to interview Katie's roommate, Veronica, and her boyfriend, Joe. It was unusual that they stayed at the party while Katie left alone in the middle of the night. However, Joe was uncooperative, claiming that Katie had left her belongings behind. The detective retraced Katie's likely route, knocking on doors and speaking with residents, hoping to gather information. Unfortunately, no one reported seeing or hearing anything unusual. However, one discovery suggested that Katie may have reached her house but never entered it. Katie left her house without her keys. The investigator found her shoes outside her bedroom window, suggesting she tried to sneak back in. It looks like someone attacked her at that moment, as evidenced by footprints in the gravel. Katie put up a fight, but sadly, her attacker was too strong. The police think the killer then took her body to a desert landfill and tried to burn. The investigation focused on the party Katie attended earlier that night, which about 40 people went to. It's possible someone followed her home and attacked her. Could it have been her boyfriend, Joe? The police interviewed everyone at the party and discovered something important that Joe hadn't mentioned. Katie saw him kissing another girl, which led to a fight and her decision to leave alone, forgetting her purse. Katie was furious and wanted to escape the party as quickly as possible. However, when the police first questioned Joe, he didn't mention the argument they had. He also didn't tell Katie's parents, who were wondering why she left the party alone, about the fight. Later, the investigators questioned Joe again, telling him they knew about the argument because Katie saw him kissing another girl. Joe admitted it was true. He claimed that after Katie left, he followed her in his car, but only drove up to her house and didn't go inside. He thought she was asleep because her bedroom light was off, so he returned to the party. It turned out Joe wasn't at the party when Katie was attacked. None of the partygoers could confirm exactly when Joe got back. He might have had time to commit the crime, take Katie's body to the desert, and return to the party. When the investigators questioned the party attendees, they found another suspicious detail. After returning to the party, Joe started calling Katie's cell phone, which was in her purse. He found the phone when it started ringing and knew it belonged to Katie. Despite this, Joe continued calling her phone until morning. The investigators were puzzled by Joe's behavior and wondered if he was trying to create an alibi or feign concern for his girlfriend, Katie. They wanted to question him further, but Joe refused to cooperate with the police. His absence from Katie's funeral only fueled their suspicion. The investigators needed to obtain his DNA sample and compare it to the DNA evidence found on Katie's body. The evidence included human skin cells discovered under her fingernails, which were identical in all 3 locations. However, getting Joe's DNA sample proved to be a challenge. He was out of town, and his parents had hired a lawyer who informed the police that Joe was refusing to provide a DNA sample. Looking at Joe's suspicious behavior, everyone was convinced he was hiding something and possibly involved in Katie's death. The police needed a legitimate way to obtain his DNA to confirm their suspicions, but it took time. While they worked on that, they also explored other leads, investigating similar cases to see if Katie was the only victim. The DNA samples found on Katie's body didn't match anyone in the national database. So, the investigators went back to the party where it all started. They asked all the male attendees to provide a DNA sample, and everyone agreed since they had nothing to hide. However, none of their DNA samples matched the one found on Katie's body, which led the investigators back to Joe. He was the only one who refused to provide his DNA, but the police found another way to get it. They discovered that Joe and Katie had been intimate in her bedroom before the party. The police took the bedsheet from Katie's room, hoping to find Joe's DNA, and they were successful. However, the male DNA found on the bedsheet didn't match the one found on Katie's body, clearing Joe of any involvement in her death. This raised another question. Why had Joe refused to cooperate with the police if he wasn't involved in Katie's death? After receiving the test results from the police, Joe's lawyer informed him that he was no longer a suspect. With this new information, Joe decided to cooperate with the police and provide a DNA sample. The subsequent test confirmed the initial finding: Joe was not involved in Katie's murder. When questioned about his initial reluctance to cooperate, Joe explained that he and Katie had been intimate before the party, and he worried that his DNA would be found on her body. Despite being cleared, the circumstances surrounding Joe's behavior on the night of Katie's death remained unclear to both the police and Katie's family. With Joe no longer a suspect, the investigation turned its focus to other leads. Several partygoers reported that Katie wore rings, including one given to her by Joe, but none were found on her body when it was discovered. The police believed the killer must have removed them. Although they searched local pawn shops, Katie's jewelry was never found. Another potential clue was a set of tire tracks near where Katie's body was discovered. Forensic experts were able to identify the brand and model of the tires. The manufacturer informed the police that these tires were commonly used on pickup trucks. The case of Katie's murder reached a dead end until a similar crime occurred in Green Bay, Wisconsin, about a year later. A girl was attacked and set on fire, but miraculously, she survived by pretending to be dead until her attackers left. She sought help at a nearby house and described her assailants to the police as two Hispanic males. The police published sketches of the suspects, which led a farmer to identify them as his workers, Gregorio Morales and Juan. One of them had relatives in Las Cruces, where Katie was killed, and often visited them. They were arrested, and the police believed they had finally caught Katie's killer. However, DNA analysis proved otherwise. The DNA samples from the Wisconsin suspects did not match the DNA evidence found on Katie's body, leaving the case still unsolved. Two men, Neo and Morales, were later found guilty of assaulting a girl in Green Bay, but they were not involved in Katie's case. Neo received a 70-year prison sentence, while Morales got 50 years. This led to another dead end in the investigation. The police were left with only two pieces of evidence: tire tracks from the crime scene and DNA samples from the perpetrator. On December 18, 2006, a significant breakthrough occurred in the investigation when a lab discovered a DNA sample matching the one found on Katie's body. The DNA belonged to 26-year-old Gabriel Avila, a married father with a lengthy criminal record. Notably, Avila had been released from prison shortly before Katie's murder, and he had no prior connection to her. Just 3 months after Katie's brutal murder, Avila was arrested on November 13, 2003, for breaking into the apartment of two young women while wielding a knife. They managed to protect themselves by locking themselves in the bathroom and calling 911. Avila was subsequently convicted of aggravated burglary with intent to commit aggravated assault in March 2004. However, Avila was released on bond and promptly became a fugitive. Unfortunately, the system's flaws delayed his connection to Katie's death by 3.5 years. Avila evaded authorities for nearly a year before being apprehended in November 2004, thanks to a tip. He could have been arrested as early as 3 months after Katie's attack, but the imperfections in the system allowed him to remain at large. Avila was sentenced to 9 years in prison, but it wasn't until 2 years into his sentence that a DNA sample was finally tested. The results showed a partial match with DNA evidence found at Katie's crime scene, prompting investigators to take swift action. They quickly located the truck Avila had used to dump Katie's body and found a ring belonging to Katie in the center console. The detectives investigating Katie's case visited Avila in prison after discovering Katie's ring in his truck. Avila confessed to the crime, explaining that he had been in the area that night to buy illegal substances while his wife was away. He claimed to have seen Katie and offered her a ride, which she declined. Later, Avila encountered Katie again in front of her house. He claimed to have stopped and offered to help her, saying she was unable to get into her house because she didn't have her purse. Katie had planned to enter her bedroom through the window, but Avila attacked her, undressed her, and committed the crime. Avila removed Katie's clothes and then, fearing she would identify him, decided to strangle her. During the struggle, he grabbed her throat and found himself unable to let go. After killing her, Avila placed her body in his pickup truck and drove to a desert landfill where he dumped her body. Avila attempted to destroy evidence by setting Katie's body on fire, but this failed. A DNA sample was later taken from Avila and matched with evidence found on Katie's body in 2003. At the time, however, it was illegal in most states, including New Mexico, to take DNA samples from those arrested. DNA was only entered into the system after a conviction and subsequent imprisonment. This led Katie's parents to campaign for a law that would require those arrested for violent crimes to submit a DNA sample, which would then be added to the national database. They fought to have this law, named after their daughter, passed in all 50 states. Katie's law, which was passed in New Mexico in 2006 with near-unanimous support, allows for the collection of DNA samples from individuals arrested for certain crimes. Thanks to the persistent efforts of Katie's parents, the law was made federal in 2010 and has since been adopted by over 31 states. The trial of Gabriel Avila started in 2017. During the trial, Avila apologized to Katie's family and expressed remorse. However, his lawyer asked the judge to be lenient, stating that Avila had shown remorse. On the other hand, District Attorney Susana Martinez argued that Avila only confessed after being confronted with DNA evidence more than 3 years after the crime. At the sentencing, Katie's father, David, begged the judge not to show leniency. He passionately argued that since they would never get to see their daughter again, Avila shouldn't be allowed to experience freedom again. In May 2007, Gabriel Avila was found guilty and sentenced to 69 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2043 after serving 30 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michelle Davis. Michelle Ann Corner was born on December 15, 1966 in Iowa. By 2008, she was a 41-year-old mother of 3 living in Des Moines. Her divorce from her husband, Randy Davis, was nearly finalized, and she had taken steps towards starting anew. Michelle had moved into her own apartment and obtained a restraining order against Randy. This marked a significant turning point in her life. However, the years leading up to the divorce were tumultuous for the family. Michelle, described as friendly and adventurous, with a passion for motorcycles, she was a respected and authoritative secretary at a trucking company. On September 11, 2008, Michelle having finally escaped the burdens of her troubled marriage. Colleagues noted the change in her demeanor since her separation. Michelle left work around 4:30 p.m., but her newfound freedom was short-lived. Just after she left, 911 operators began receiving calls about an accident on Interstate 235. A Mercury Sable was found upside down, with Michelle, still wearing her seatbelt, unconscious in the driver's seat. Paramedics rushed to the scene, but sadly couldn't save her. Michelle Davis was pronounced dead. After arriving at the scene, the police initially believed that Michelle lost control of her vehicle, resulting in an accident. However, they quickly ruled out this theory the next day. Forensic experts determined that Michelle's death was not caused by injuries sustained during the rollover, but rather by a gunshot wound to the head. The bullet was extracted and sent for analysis in the hopes of identifying the perpetrator. As they waited for the results of the ballistic examination, local authorities took precautions to ensure public safety. They considered the possibility that Michelle was a random victim and that the shooter might strike again. To address concerns, the police increased patrols in the area. Once it was clear that Michelle's death was not an accident, detectives revisited the crime scene to search for clues. Unfortunately, their efforts yielded no results, as they found neither the cartridge case nor any other evidence to aid in the investigation. The police initially thought Michelle was the victim of a car accident, so the traffic services cleared the site, potentially destroying any evidence. Despite this, the detectives remained hopeful that they could still find answers by reviewing traffic camera recordings. These recordings often help solve cases, and this one was no exception. The investigators started studying the recordings from the traffic cameras, focusing on the one closest to the crime scene. They rewound the recording to the time when people started calling 911. After half an hour, they found what they were looking for. The video showed Michelle's car lying upside down, but the footage was of poor quality, resembling a slideshow with separate pictures and intervals between them. Michelle Davis's family was shocked when investigators revealed her death was not an accident. Her father, Michael Lee Corner, was particularly devastated, having lost another daughter, Cheryl Sue, in 1965, at just 1 year old, and now dealing with the loss of a second child. Michelle's family described her life as having changed significantly in recent times. Despite having no financial problems, they suspected that her husband, Randy Davis, might have been involved in her death. Their divorce was almost finalized, and Michelle had filed a restraining order against Randy. This revelation led the investigators to consider Randy as a potential suspect. Meanwhile, another detective spoke with Michelle's colleagues at her workplace and discovered that she had been in a close relationship with a man named Matt Jorgensen, who was also a colleague. This new information added another suspect to the investigation, as the police sought to understand the complex circumstances surrounding Michelle's death. According to Michelle's friend, Michelle and Matt Jorgensen had mutual feelings for each other. However, since Michelle was going through a divorce from Randy Davis, they kept their relationship private, only sharing it with close friends and colleagues. When investigators spoke with Matt, he openly discussed his relationship with Michelle and provided a detailed account of his whereabouts on the day of her death. He claimed they never had any arguments or fights. The police verified his alibi, and he was subsequently eliminated as a suspect. The ballistic examination revealed that the murder weapon was a .22 caliber rifle, and experts determined that the shot was fired at close range. Given that the crime occurred on the interstate, the police believed the shooter was likely in another vehicle that was driving alongside Michelle's car. This new information led to the emergence of a new suspect in the case. The police received a tip from Michelle's insurance company that her brother Todd was seeking payment, raising suspicions of a life insurance-motivated crime. A detective visited Todd's house to investigate. When the detective started asking Todd about his whereabouts on the day of Michelle's death, Todd realized he was a suspect. He explained that he was in a different part of the city at the time of her death, and that the family was struggling financially. Todd said he had turned to the insurance company because he needed the money to pay for Michelle's funeral. The police verified Todd's alibi and found that he was not in the area where Michelle was killed. This ruled him out as a suspect, but Todd provided information that led the police to investigate another suspect, Josh. Josh was the son of Randy from a previous marriage and was an adult at the time of Michelle's death. A Marine named Josh had recently returned home from the Army when a tragic event occurred. Michelle was fatally wounded in a car incident, and the police considered Josh a suspect due to his military background. As the investigation continued, a woman reported witnessing something on Interstate 235 on the same day and time as the incident. A witness reported seeing a red Ford F-150 pickup truck driven by a white man in a baseball cap who was driving erratically, swerving between lanes, and appeared to be chasing someone. This new information led investigators to re-examine traffic camera footage, focusing on finding a red pickup truck in the area. The footage confirmed the witness's account, showing a red pickup truck following Michelle from her workplace. Although the footage was not clear enough to reveal the driver's face or the truck's license plate, further review of other camera recordings revealed that the truck was consistently following Michelle's route, staying close behind her as she approached the location of her death. This evidence suggested that the perpetrator likely fired the fatal shot from the truck while driving. Detectives investigating Michelle's death had several suspects in mind and soon discovered that her husband, Randy Davis, owned a red pickup truck. They immediately visited his house, but found only his son, Josh, who was a Marine trained in handling weapons and had access to his father's vehicle. Josh claimed that on the day of Michelle's death, he went shopping with his sister and then spent the evening at home watching TV. However, detectives found Josh's alibi suspicious. According to Josh, the divorce proceedings between Michelle and his father were challenging, partly due to Michelle's demand for half the house's value. Josh also stated that his father arrived home around 5:30 p.m. that day. The conversation with Josh revealed that he might have had a motive for the crime, as he was upset about Michelle trying to take part of his inheritance during the divorce. This led detectives to view Josh as a potential suspect with a possible motive. Meanwhile, the police canvassed shops and gas stations along the route from Michelle's workplace to the crime scene, hoping to find additional surveillance footage. Their efforts paid off when they discovered crucial footage at a store just a few miles from Michelle's workplace. On September 11, 2008, the day Michelle died, a red pickup truck arrived at the store at around 4 p.m. The truck was registered to Randy Davis. The police needed to determine who was driving it that day. Security footage showed the driver getting out of the truck and entering the store, but the poor video quality made it impossible to identify whether it was Josh or Randy. The man disappeared from view for a while, then reappeared, made a purchase, and left the store. It's worth noting that this all happened at 4 p.m., while Michelle left work at 4:30 p.m. The police continued to analyze the footage and found that the pickup truck returned to the store several times over the next 30 minutes, but the driver didn't get out of the truck on these subsequent visits. The truck's final appearance near the store coincided with Michelle leaving work. Despite being unable to identify the suspect, the police tried to contact Randy Davis again. This time, he responded and came to the police station. The investigators informed Randy of his rights and made it clear that he was not under arrest. Randy agreed to cooperate and answer some questions. When asked about his activities on September 11th, Randy mentioned that he was going through a difficult divorce with his wife, Michelle, with whom he had been married for 17 years. Randy claimed to have worked as a carpenter and was at work on the day of the incident. When questioned about his return time, Randy initially hesitated before stating that he arrived home at 3:45 p.m. However, this statement contradicted the surveillance footage and Josh's testimony, which indicated that Randy arrived home around 5:30 p.m. Randy further stated that he didn't leave his home after 3:45 p.m. and was home alone until Josh joined him to cook dinner together. However, this information conflicted with Josh's testimony, which stated that he was already home when Randy arrived. The alibis of Randy and Josh were intertwined, and investigators realized that one of them was not telling the truth. To test Randy's reaction, investigators informed him that Michelle had died from a bullet wound, not from injuries sustained in a car crash. Randy showed little reaction to this news, pretending to be surprised and lowering his eyes. When investigators asked him when he last saw Michelle, Randy requested a lawyer, which ended the conversation. The investigation was lacking in crucial evidence, including the weapon used to take Michelle's life, so Randy Davis was released. On September 15, 2008, Michelle's family and friends gathered to pay their respects at her funeral. Randy Davis attended the ceremony, putting on a show of grief, including bursting into tears. The investigators were working hard to find the answer. Unexpectedly, Josh Davis, Randy's son, walked into the police station with his lawyer and offered to make a statement. According to Josh, his father's car was parked in the driveway when he returned home from his sister. On September 11, 2008, Randy Davis committed a horrific act of violence. His wife, Michelle, had filed for divorce and was seeking part of the property in the divorce proceedings. Randy was unable to accept this and decided to take drastic measures. According to his son Josh, Randy had been planning this act of violence and had even told Josh that he was going to do something that would make Michelle regret it. Josh tried to stop his father, but Randy was determined to carry out his plan. Randy parked his red pickup truck outside the store where Michelle worked and waited for her to leave. He drove past the store several times, making sure not to miss the moment. When Michelle left work, Randy followed her and eventually found the right moment to strike. He rolled down the passenger side window and fired, shooting Michelle. Josh's testimony was crucial in the investigation, and the police were able to arrest Randy Davis based on the information he provided. The incident was also captured on the store's CCTV footage, which showed Randy's truck parked outside the store several times before the shooting. Randy Davis was initially charged with first-degree charges for the death of Michelle, but he made a deal to plead guilty to second-degree deprivation of life in exchange for a reduced sentence. As a result, Davis was sentenced to 50 years in prison in 2010. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Michelle Anglin. Michelle Anglin was born on November 27, 1973, in Fountain Valley, California. Later, her family moved to Arizona, where she was raised by her mother, Peggy, and stepfather, Larry McCall. Michelle had two older sisters, Cindy and Christina. When Michelle was around 20 years old, she started dating Hudson England, and their relationship blossomed. They made each other happy, and when Hudson proposed, Michelle accepted without hesitation. In late 1995, they got married in a joyous ceremony surrounded by their families and friends. Michelle's mother, Peggy Cohen McCall, was also a realtor. According to Michelle's mother, it was she who inspired Michelle to enter the real estate industry. Michelle's family would regularly keep in touch with her via her work phone when she was in the office. When showing houses to clients, Michelle always carried a pager, allowing her loved ones to reach her if needed. However, on February 9, 1996, Michelle did not respond to calls and messages from her family. She would usually inform someone about her plans to show a house to a potential buyer. The job of a realtor can be fraught with risk, often exceeding that of other professions. This is due in part to the nature of their work, which often involves working alone and visiting isolated locations to show properties. Predators often target realtors, luring them to empty homes with false intentions, such as feigning interest in buying a house. Once the realtor is alone and vulnerable, the predator can take advantage of the situation. Concern for this inherent danger led Michelle's family to become worried when they couldn't contact her during the day. Michelle's sister Cindy sought assistance from her boyfriend, a member of the Phoenix police, who offered to perform a welfare check on Michelle. When he visited her workplace, he discovered Michelle's parked car, which seemed undisturbed. When Cindy's boyfriend entered the office, he found the lights on and music playing. However, a closer look revealed that Michelle's personal belongings, including her purse and pager, were still on a table in the unlocked office. This raised questions about why she had left in such a hurry, abandoning her belongings behind. That evening, Michelle's family filed a missing persons report with the police. Earlier that day, Michelle had an appointment with a potential buyer to show them 3 houses near her office. Since the houses were close to her office, she decided not to use her car. When the police arrived, they inspected Michelle's office and then visited the 3 houses she might have shown the buyer. During their initial search, they found 3 pink buttons in the master closet on the 2nd floor of one of the houses. They also noticed that 2 candles in the master bathroom had been knocked over, one into each sink, but everything else seemed undisturbed. Cindy's boyfriend asked her about Michelle's outfit, as police found buttons they suspected belonged to her. Cindy couldn't recall. A search of the houses, especially where the buttons were found, led to a tragic discovery that Michelle's body under the master bed. Investigation revealed seminal fluid, broken candlesticks, Michelle's clothes, and paint and plaster chips under the bed and in the bathroom. The forensic examination found no evidence of forced intimate contact before Michelle's death. However, it suggested the perpetrator intended to do so, undressing Michelle despite her resistance. Bruises on her neck indicated she was strangled while fighting back. The violent confrontation occurred in the master closet and bath, as shown by scattered buttons, seminal fluid, damaged candles, and broken ceramic chips. During the attack, Michelle's clothing was torn off, as evident by her tattered and interwoven clothes. Her body showed multiple signs of the intense struggle, numerous bruises and abrasions on her body, defensive wounds on her hands and wrists. Michelle's desperate fight to defend herself against her assailant ultimately proved futile. After her daughter's death, Peggy spoke out about the safety concerns facing women who work alone, including real estate agents in model homes and open houses. As a result of her vocal advocacy, Peggy claims to have been fired from her job. The police's first lead in the investigation was Michelle's husband, Hudson England. It's standard procedure for law enforcement to initially investigate family members to determine if they were involved in the crime. Michelle's family, however, did not suspect Hudson, as they were a happy couple who had married just 4 months prior to her death. Nevertheless, the investigators decided to look into Hudson's alibi. When questioned by the police, Hudson appeared genuinely distraught over Michelle's death. He claimed to have spent the day visiting several car dealerships in search of a family vehicle, as they were planning to start a family. The police verified his alibi and found it to be true, ultimately ruling him out as a suspect. During the investigation, he stated that he had no idea who would want to harm Michelle and speculated that she was likely attacked by someone she was showing a house to. To further investigate, the police reviewed Michelle's phone records and discovered that on February 9th, between 3:45 and 4:15 p.m., she was on a call with a fellow sales agent. Michelle abruptly ended the call, stating that a potential buyer had arrived at the subdivision. The fellow agent attempted to call Michelle back between 4:30 and 5 p.m., but the calls went unanswered. This information allowed detectives to narrow down the time frame of the attack, but they still needed to identify the person Michelle was supposed to meet. Unfortunately, Michelle had not mentioned the potential buyer's name during the phone conversation, nor had she written it in her work notes, leaving the police without any immediate leads on the identity of the mysterious individual. The police investigation into the attack on Michelle involved interviewing people who lived in the area where the incident occurred. One resident, who happened to be returning home from work between 4 o'clock and 4:45 p.m. on February 9th, reported seeing a white man coming down the steps of one of the 3 houses for sale in the neighborhood. This witness also noticed a black, full-sized, older model Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates parked in the lot of the house. Additionally, several potential buyers who visited the subdivision that day between 4 o'clock and 4:30 p.m. reported seeing a man walking from the direction of the second and third model homes. They also observed that candlesticks in the master bathroom of the third model home had been knocked over into the sinks. Kim Ramos, a young real estate sales associate from a nearby subdivision, contacted the police after hearing the news. She reported that on February 9th, the same day Michelle's body was found at around 2 p.m., she had met with a potential buyer who drove an old black Chevrolet pickup truck. Kim found it suspicious that he was interested in a $500,000 house, but drove a vehicle that suggested a more modest lifestyle. When Kim accompanied he to a 2-story house, supposedly to answer his questions, she became uneasy. He stood too close to her and casually touched her hand several times, making her wary. After spending only a brief time with him, Kim returned to the sales office, feeling that his questions about the house, such as the type of flooring and the possibility of adding a 4th bedroom, seemed unnecessary and even foolish. Ms. Ramos played a crucial role in the investigation by asking the suspicious client to fill out a guest registration card, which he reluctantly completed. The client, who claimed to be James Adams, provided his real home address and phone number. When police visited the address, they spotted a black Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates parked outside. The truck was registered to 32-year-old James Van Adams, who was not at home at the time. Police took photos of the truck and showed them to Kim, who confirmed that it was the same vehicle driven by the suspicious client she had met just hours before Michelle's death. Further investigation into James Van Adams' background revealed that Adams was a 32-year-old man who was currently separated from his wife and had a child. He had a prior conviction in California for a crime committed in 1990. In that case, Adams had targeted Melissa Cunningham, a petite sales agent who was working alone at an apartment complex. He had asked her to show him model homes that were still under construction, specifically expressing interest in a 2-story home with a master bedroom and bathroom upstairs. This event further increased suspicions about Adams. Investigating Michelle England's death led detectives to quickly uncover a previous failed attack by James Adams. They obtained a search and arrest warrant, returned to Adams' home, and took him in for questioning. However, Adams refused to cooperate, appeared nervous, and had noticeable injuries on his face, including under his eye. The detective suspected that these injuries might have been sustained when Michelle defended herself with the missing candlesticks, which were later found. As a result, they collected DNA, blood, and hair samples from Adams. A witness, Kim Ramos, identified him and reported that he had no visible injuries on his face during their meeting. Adams claimed his injuries came from working on his pickup truck, but work records showed he left early on February 9th and didn't return, citing car troubles. When seen next, he had a new facial injury and black eye, which his employer and coworker said weren't there before. The police analysis of Adams' DNA, blood, and hair samples is detailed in court documents, which also reference a sample of seminal fluid found on the carpet in the closet. The Phoenix Crime Lab and DPS Lab conducted DNA testing on a carpet sample. Initially, results excluded James Van Adams, but retesting by the crime lab and further testing included him as a contributor. Despite the police taking extensive fingerprint and footprint evidence from the model home, none of the prints matched Adams. Adams was charged with the murder of Michelle England and denied any involvement in the crime. His trial began on July 1, 1997. During the trial, prosecutors presented evidence that they claimed linked Adams to Michelle's death. One key witness was Kim Ramos, who believed she had narrowly escaped being attacked by Adams herself. Ramos testified that Adams had shown suspicious behavior, including wearing casual clothing, driving an old vehicle, and asking unusual questions about the house's flooring and fourth bedroom. Prosecutors also presented evidence of Adams' interactions with other sales agents in California and Briarwood, which they claimed showed a pattern of suspicious behavior. Susan Wright, an employee, met with Adams multiple times. Their first meeting was in September or October 1995, when Adams asked Wright to show him a house. Wright recalled Adams standing too close and not asking questions about the house. On November 5, 1995, James Van Adams visited Susan's office again, signing in as Jim Adams. This was not an incident, as Adams had repeatedly visited her office and called her, asking her out on dates. A pattern of behavior emerged, revealing Adams' deliberate plan of action. Adams targeted women with similar characteristics, attacking them in California in 1990. Victims Michelle, Susan Wright, Kim Ramos, and Melissa Cunningham worked alone in shared physical traits. Attacks occurred in the afternoon, with Adams often asking victims to accompany him upstairs in a two-story house. He used a similar method, putting his right arm around their necks, ripping off their clothes, and attempting to assault them. The trial was a challenging experience for Michelle's family, who were present throughout the proceedings. The judge had to invite Michelle's mother to go out from the courtroom because she was overcome with emotion and yelled at Adams. However, Adams appeared to take pleasure in the family's distress, occasionally flashing a grin. Nevertheless, his demeanor changed when the jury delivered a guilty verdict on all counts on July 14, 1997, and he was subsequently sentenced to death. Following the sentencing, Adams launched a series of appeals, claiming he was innocent. In his appeal, he argued that a previous incident in California in 1990, in which Melissa Cunningham escaped, supported his claim that he did not intentionally try to kill Michelle. Adams alleged that during the California attack, he had simply restrained his victim by the neck in an attempt to make intimate contact. He insisted that this incident demonstrated that he did not plan to kill Michelle, and the jury should have considered this when reaching their verdict. James Van Adams' attempts to appeal his death sentence were denied, and on March 14, 2005, he took his own life while in prison. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death was asphyxia, consistent with suicide. The news of his death brought relief to the family of Michelle. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sierra Breeland. Sierra Locklear, a cheerful and ambitious woman from Cleveland, Georgia, grew up with a dream to live in Atlanta one day. To achieve her goal, she had to leave her home state and pursue higher education. She attended the University of Tennessee for her undergraduate degree and then earned her law degree from Florida State University. Sierra became a successful lawyer, specializing in insurance defense. According to her mother, Kelly, Sierra was an energetic person who overcame obstacles to achieve her goals. She was happy, loving, and dedicated to her career. In October 2020, Sierra met Xavier Breeland on Tinder, and their relationship quickly blossomed. They got married just 6 months later, and Sierra soon became pregnant. During this time, she provided legal assistance to Xavier in his dispute with his ex-wife. They decided to start a new life in Carmel, Indiana, where Sierra secured a job at a law firm. At the end of 2021, she gave birth to a son, whom they named Jackson. Xavier and Sierra appeared to be a perfect couple from the outside, but their relationship was troubled from the start. According to Shelby Campbell, Sierra's best friend, problems began to surface shortly after they started dating. Sierra had initially tried to end things with Xavier, but he refused to accept rejection. He showed up uninvited at her apartment and sent threatening messages when he saw her with another man. Sierra gave Xavier another chance, and they married 6 months later. However, Sierra confided in Shelby about her growing fears and concerns about her husband's behavior. In one text message, Sierra expressed her feelings of being torn between her love for Xavier and her fear of his increasingly bad behavior. She worried about their future together, citing his lack of remorse for his actions and his tendency to blame her for his behavior. Their text exchanges, which shall be shared, demonstrate the depth of Sierra's fear. On multiple occasions, Sierra called the police out of desperation, but by the time they arrived, Sierra would downplay the situation, fearing the consequences of speaking out against her husband. This cycle repeated itself in both Georgia and Indiana, where the police were called to their residence multiple times. Sierra's parents, Kelly and Nick Lair, were aware that her home life with Xavier was troubled. They encouraged her to end the relationship, reassuring her that she could always return to the safety of her family home. Sierra's journey to Georgia began when she and Xavier embarked on the 11-hour drive south. Sierra arrived at her parents' house on February 19th, where she spent the night with relatives she hadn't seen since moving to Indiana. Sierra planned a trip to visit her family in Georgia, secretly intending to stay and divorce her husband Xavier due to escalating abuse. She told her parents about her plans and the abuse, and they supported her decision. On February 19th, Sierra arrived at her parents' house in Cleveland, Georgia, and reaffirmed her decision to divorce Xavier. The next day, she left to pick up her son Jackson from her mother-in-law's house in Johns Creek, Georgia. Sierra sent a text message to her best friend saying that she was waiting to pick up Jackson, but Xavier was refusing to hand him over to her. On February 21st, Sierra texted Nick, her father, saying she'd return home the next morning, and he gave her permission. When her father didn't hear back the next day, he reached out, and Sierra replied that everything was fine, just that she was feeling under the weather. Nick texted Sierra on Wednesday and Thursday, but she didn't respond. By Friday, her family was worried. On Saturday, Nick received a call from an Indiana police officer who said Sierra was missing and her husband had filed a report. The family was shocked, wondering why Sierra hadn't told them she was in Indiana. Nick called Xavier's father. He denied seeing Sierra, but it was later revealed that Xavier had reported her missing to the Carmel Police Department on February 26, 2022. Video footage showed her last known location was her mother-in-law's home in Georgia on February 24th. Sierra disappeared on February 25th after leaving her Carmel home to walk to a store around 1 p.m. She was last seen wearing a black top and purple shorts, despite the low temperature. However, she never arrived at the store and left behind her personal belongings, including 3 phones and her 5-month-old son. The family finds it suspicious as Sierra had a burner phone for emergencies and wouldn't leave her baby behind. Kelly, Sierra's mother, said Sierra confided in her about the couple's financial struggles and alleged her son-in-law was physically and emotionally abusive. When Sierra went missing, leaving her baby behind, Kelly feared the worst. Kelly described Sierra as a loving mom who prioritized her son's care. When Sierra vanished without the baby, her husband's alibi seemed suspicious. 2 days later, police visited Xavier, Sierra's husband, after an accidental gunshot at his home. His criminal past, including a 2005 felony conviction, raised suspicions. Xavier was named a person of interest in his wife Sierra's disappearance and arrested on an unrelated charge. He had an outstanding warrant for aggravated stalking in Qua County, where he had tracked his ex-wife using a GPS device in their children's stuffed animal. 2 weeks after Sierra's disappearance, police, volunteers, family, and friends searched neighborhoods in Johns Creek, focusing on areas along Medlock Bridge Road. They passed out flyers and set up electronic signs asking for the public's help, and contacted companies to display Sierra's information across Metro Atlanta. The family of Sierra sought information on her disappearance, specifically regarding a white 2017 Volkswagen Tiguan. During the investigation, Xavier, Sierra's husband, was the only person seen getting out of the car at gas stations and shops. Law enforcement officials searched the mother-in-law's house, collecting evidence with a search warrant, and forensic professionals and cadavered dogs to look for signs of a struggle or potential bloodstains. A search of Xavier Breeland's residence by authorities, including a K-9 unit, found no trail. A video from March 2022 shows Xavier telling his children that Sierra was kidnapped and won't be coming home, contradicting his previous statement to police. The video was obtained while Xavier was in jail for aggravated stalking, unrelated to Sierra's disappearance. In August 2022, Xavier was found not guilty, but he was quickly arrested again and extradited to Indiana to face a new charge, unlawful possession of a firearm by a serious violent felon. At his initial hearing, Xavier asked the judge to reduce his bail to an amount his mother could afford. The judge set the bail at $35,000, lower than the $50,000 requested by prosecutors. Xavier promised the judge that he would turn his life around if released, even offering to get a job as a truck driver. Despite Xavier's plea, the judge ultimately set the bail at $100,000. Xavier was eventually released in February 2023 after posting bail. However, this decision would have consequences that will be discussed later. Xavier was repeatedly questioned about Sierra Brain's disappearance, but he maintained his innocence, claiming she vanished after going to the store. He stuck to this story, denying any involvement in her disappearance. The search for evidence in Sierra Brain's disappearance is a daunting task, considering the vast areas of land that need to be searched. Court documents revealed that some items were taken from Xavier's mom's home. Crime scene investigators removed the carpet and mattress from the home on April 21, 2022. After Xavier's arrest on March 1, 5-month-old Jackson was taken into state care. Sierra's parents, Nick and Kelly, are now able to be with their newborn grandchildren and are working to bring the infant back home to Georgia. Despite Sierra remains missing. Over the past year, multiple searches have been conducted, focusing on specific areas, but sadly, no leads have been found. Xavier Breeland is the only person of interest named in Sierra's disappearance, but no charges have been brought against him. Her family believes he knows what happened to her and is the only one who can give them answers. Kelly LeClaire thinks Sierra's body could be in Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, or Indiana and is asking outdoor enthusiasts to be on the lookout. Sierra's parents now have custody of the couple's child. Xavier was released on bail for an unrelated firearms case, but failed to appear in court and a warrant has been issued for his arrest. The FBI is now involved in the case, and the search for Sierra and Xavier continues. The disappearance of both Sierra and Xavier has raised many unanswered questions. Sierra's mother believes Sierra feared Xavier and didn't plan to return to Indiana with him. With both missing, the case is now more urgent. The trial for Xavier's gun charge has been postponed, and authorities and Sierra's family are seeking public help to locate them and shed light on their disappearances. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shad. Shad was born on September 7, 1997, in Green Bay, Wisconsin, to parents Tara Pinich and Michael Tyrion. His parents later separated, and his mother started dating a man named Steve. Shad grew up in a loving family that included his parents, 2 sisters, Ava and Svea, a brother, Bo Smith, and his younger sibling, Tyrion. He was also surrounded by a large, close-knit family that included paternal and maternal grandparents, as well as many aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and cousins. Additionally, Shad had many friends who were like a second family to him. As a child, Shad attended Howard and SWO schools. However, he later decided to help out with the family business, working alongside his father and grandfather. Shad was a lively and adventurous person who enjoyed activities such as camping, gaming, and spending quality time with loved ones. Shad was a talented and artistic person who loved carving wood. He was also kind and compassionate, often putting others' interests before his own. His empathetic nature made him a loving family member. However, what happened to him is all the more tragic because of his good character. On the evening of February 23, 2022, Shad told his family that he was going out to meet two friends. They planned to hang out for the night, and his parents bid him goodbye around 9:30 p.m. At the time, no one knew the danger he was about to face. Shad's mother, Tara, had gone out for a while and returned a couple of hours later. She then went upstairs to sleep, unaware that her son had returned home with his friend Taylor and was in the basement. Several hours after midnight, Tara was awoken by the sound of the front door slamming shut as Taylor left. This startled her, and she came downstairs. Tara called out to her son, but when he didn't answer, she went down to the basement to look for him. As she entered the basement, she noticed a bucket with a rag covering it, and she removed the rag, revealing a horrific sight. Her son's severed head was inside the bucket. Panicked, she immediately called 911. "My son's head is in a bucket in my basement," she told the operator. When the operator asked her to confirm what she had seen, she replied, "I looked in a bucket and saw my son's head." When police officers arrived at her residence on Stony Brook Lane in Green Bay, Wisconsin, they secured the entire house before entering the basement. There, they were met with a gruesome scene that left them shocked. They knew they had to find the person responsible for the savage crime, as they posed a potential threat to society as a whole. During their investigation, detectives made a disturbing discovery in a bucket: Shad's severed genitalia and head. They then analyzed Shad's phone records and found that on the evening of February 23rd, he had agreed to meet his friends Taylor and Alexander. At around 9:30 p.m. Taylor picked up Shad to hang out at her apartment. According to Shad's mother, Tara, police questioned Taylor and Alexander at their homes. Taylor was living with her friend Scott Thomas at his house. At Taylor's residence, detectives found bloody footprints near her minivan leading up to her apartment. The investigators took Taylor to the station for additional questioning despite having already been charged with a horrific crime: beheading her ex-partner. A bizarre scene unfolded in the interrogation room as Taylor appeared unconcerned by the situation and instead focused on complaining about the room's cleanliness. As she sat, gazing at the camera, it became evident that she showed no signs of remorse or guilt over what she had done to Shad. The detective got straight to the point and asked her how she knew Shad. Taylor replied that he was her ex-boyfriend. She also admitted that she had met with Shad on February 23rd in her apartment, where Scott was also present. Additionally, she confirmed that the minivan belonged to Scott. When questioned about the activities she, Shad, and Alexander did that night, Taylor readily confessed that they had smoked weed together. She explained that she was giving Shad a haircut while they smoked. However, after a while, Alexander decided to head home, citing the late hour. After Alexander left, Taylor and Shad decided to go to Shad's house, where he told her that his mother and her boyfriend would be coming home late. They went to Shad's house, where they used ice and also injected trazodone, a medication Taylor had stolen from her friend Scott. This revelation suggested that Taylor struggled with substance abuse, adding another layer of complexity to the case. During the interrogation, the detective realized that Taylor was under the influence of drugs, but continued questioning her anyway. Taylor told Detective Graff that Shad's body was still in the basement. When the detective asked for more details about what happened to Shad, Taylor claimed she couldn't remember, saying she had blacked out after smoking and drinking for a while. During the interrogation, Taylor initially attempted to deceive the detectives but soon realized her tactics were ineffective. She eventually confessed to being intimate with Shad on the night in question, revealing that their encounter involved various props, including a choke collar. As the questioning continued, Taylor acknowledged that she took pleasure in strangling Shad, and that he also enjoyed it. This behavior exposed her sadistic and violent tendencies. When asked about her preferences, Taylor clarified that she enjoyed being the one doing the strangling, rather than being on the receiving end. She also admitted to having a history of engaging in this behavior. When questioned about the whereabouts of the remaining body parts, Taylor expressed regret for not bringing Shad's head with her. However, this regret was not driven by remorse for her actions, but rather frustration with her own mistake, which ultimately led the police to her. The detective was surprised by her straightforward answers, which detailed the dismemberment of Shad's body. Taylor explained that some body parts were in the van, while others were in the basement. What was more astonishing was her lack of remorse after committing such a heinous crime. The conversation then shifted to the whereabouts of the body parts and organs. Taylor explained that they were all in a black bag. The detective wondered if they would need to take the head to a separate location, to which Taylor replied that it would be difficult to dispose of all the organs. The detective suspected Taylor's behavior was indicative of a disturbed psyche or mental health condition, hindering her emotional response to the crime. Alternatively, she might have been under the influence of drugs, triggering her to act on intrusive thoughts. During the interrogation, Taylor giggled and laughed while providing details of the crime, displaying a disturbing nonchalance. She casually admitted to dismembering her ex-lover with kitchen knives and not disposing of the body parts due to laziness. Her lack of emotion and calm demeanor raised doubts about her mental health and whether she had planned the harm. Taylor denied any intention, but her response lacked remorse. Taylor described how she strangled Shad with chains, admitting that she enjoyed the process and didn't stop even when Shad struggled. This behavior showcases her cruel and sadistic nature. During the interrogation, Taylor shocked the detectives by revealing that Taylor continued to engage in sex with Shad's body after discovering he had passed away. Taylor made a disturbing statement, claiming that when she loved something or someone too much, Taylor felt an overwhelming urge to kill it and lost control. This suggests that Taylor was fully aware of her actions when she dismembered Shad, as the incident occurred immediately after they had been intimate. Taylor openly discussed her disturbing actions after killing Shad, revealing a shocking disregard for human life. Taylor admitted to playing with his body for 2 to 3 hours after his death, demonstrating necrophiliac tendencies. Taylor also expressed regret over not taking any drugs after the incident, knowing it would have calmed her down. During the dismemberment and cleanup process, she became frustrated, but later claimed to have enjoyed it. Taylor explained that she was in a state of panic after the incident and didn't know how to react. She considered calling the police or an ambulance but didn't. When questioned by Detective David about her decision, Taylor expressed regret over her actions. She acknowledged that she had thought about seeking help but was overwhelmed by her emotions. In a later interrogation, Taylor provided a detailed and graphic account of how she dismembered the victim's body. Taylor pulled him over, his head hanging off the bed, near the tub. After I cut his head off, Taylor moved the tub underneath. Taylor explains the sequence: I beheaded the body, blood spilled into a pail, and the head fell in. I poured the contents into a blue Tupperware, finished cutting the head, and placed it in a container. The internal organs are in the Tupperware were scattered around, some in separate plastic bags. I put the bagged organs in a backpack, leaving the blood in the blue tub. Taylor Shaw Business was born in Avon, Illinois in November 1997 to Maria and Arturo Coronado. When she was in 4th grade, her family relocated to Wisconsin. Later, she married Warren Shaw Business and had a son, Matto, with him. Despite this, she reconnected with an ex-boyfriend, Shad, and engaged in a relationship with him. After the heinous crime was committed, the authorities recognized that Taylor had significant mental health issues that required attention. However, they also determined that at the time of the crime, she was fully aware of her actions, which included the admission of enjoying the process of dismembering Shad's body. Taylor also confessed to using sex toys on his deceased body and engaging in other forms of physical intimacy with him. Taylor's show business was arrested on February 23, 2022, for the murder and dismemberment of her ex-partner, Shad. Her trial began on July 24, 2022. Due to the severity of the crime, the court needed to determine whether Taylor was sane at the time of the crime and if she understood that her actions were wrong. During the trial, Taylor's grandmother testified about Taylor's difficult childhood. She explained that Taylor's mother had passed away at a young age and her father had remarried. Taylor had also experienced the loss of her brother, Arturo Coronado Jr., in a motorcycle accident in 2021. Additionally, Taylor's husband, Warren Shaw Business, was already incarcerated for distributing methamphetamine and was also serving as Taylor's defender in court. The grandmother further revealed that Taylor's young son had been taken into custody by Child Protective Services just 24 hours after his birth. However, Taylor's grandmother and her husband were fighting to regain custody of their grandson, Matto. The grandmother attributed Taylor's turbulent upbringing to her struggles with depression and bipolar disorder. She emphasized that Taylor needed psychological help, but also deserved a second chance at life. Arturo Coronado, Taylor's 51-year-old father, was brought to the courtroom from prison, where he was serving time for assaulting a child. What was unsettling was Taylor's reaction to his presence. She couldn't stop smiling and giggling throughout his testimony. Despite her unusual behavior, her father provided a candid account of her upbringing. He acknowledged that Taylor had struggled in high school, which led him to send her to live with her grandparents in Texas, where she eventually graduated. He also revealed that Taylor had been admitted to a psychiatric center before the birth of her child, Matto, due to hallucinations and suicidal thoughts. According to her, Arturo Coronado, Taylor's life took a turn for the worse when she met her husband, who introduced her to drugs. When Alexander Gainan, a mutual friend of Taylor and Shad, took the stand to testify, Taylor continued to giggle and laugh throughout his statement. Alexander explained that he had known Taylor and Shad since their time at Bellevue Middle School, confirming that they had dated at the time. He also shared his account of the night of the murder, stating that he had been drinking with Taylor and others at her apartment, but left around 1 or 2 a.m. when it got late. Alexander added that he had attempted to contact Shad the following day, but received no response. At her next court appearance, Taylor was seen wearing a spit mask, typically used to prevent individuals from spitting on law enforcement or court staff. Valerie, Taylor's second cousin, and several distant relatives testified on her behalf, stating that while Taylor currently required psychological treatment, she deserved a second chance at life in the future. Kelly Therian criticized Taylor, saying her actions were cowardly and that her mental health issues shouldn't be a reason for parole. Assistant District Attorney Caleb Saunders concluded that Taylor's actions were not a result of her substance abuse or mental health issues, but rather a deliberate choice. He emphasized that her lack of remorse warrants the harsher sentence for such a heinous crime. Defense attorney Christopher Frolick argued Taylor deserves a second chance, despite committing a horrific crime. He called the murder an honest mistake, suggesting Taylor didn't intentionally commit the crime or take pleasure in it. Frolick claimed Taylor was intoxicated and not fully aware of her actions when speaking with detectives. When Taylor requested a possible extension of the trial, her outburst in court revealed that Taylor was not only struggling with substance abuse, but also had deeper issues that required immediate attention. The trial concluded on September 26, 2022, with Judge Thomas Walsh sentencing Taylor to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case shocked the world due to the inhumane nature of the crime, in which Taylor dismembered her former lover, Shad. What was even more disturbing was Taylor's apparent lack of remorse or guilt for the heinous crime she had committed. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Ashley Wadsworth. Ashley Wadsworth was born on July 25, 2002, in Vernon Township, British Columbia, Canada. Her parents are Kenneth Wadsworth and Christy Jen Den, and she has an older sister named Haley. Ashley's family is large and close-knit, with over 50 relatives, including cousins, uncles, and aunts, all living in the same community. Ashley is a fun-loving, outgoing, and energetic girl, which makes her popular with many friends. She enjoys outdoor activities such as swimming, horseback riding, and skiing. Ashley is passionate about tennis and plays the clarinet. She is also very active on social media, frequently sharing memes, jokes, and photos. Ashley met Jack Seppel on social media in 2015 when she was 12 and he was 15. Jack was born on January 9, 1999. His mother is Tracy Dalton, who is married to Ricky. Jack's father passed away in 2019, and it is said that Jack had a strained relationship with his father. Jack did not keep in touch with his brother Jordan but did keep in touch with his sister Nadia. Apart from his mother and sister, he did not have many close relationships, choosing to interact with people mainly on social media and through video games. Some of Jack's acquaintances said that he often got into trouble at school. They remembered him as a cheerful, charming, and lively person, but he also had a dark side that showed when he was angry at himself and others. A friend of Ashley's spoke to Jack through social media and introduced the two young people to each other. Like many other teenagers, Ashley naturally connected with strangers on various platforms and formed virtual friendships, whether they had shared interests or were simply attracted to each other. Jack and Ashley quickly became virtual friends. At the time, Ashley did not have a smartphone and used the family computer to access social media, so her friendship with Jack was not a secret that her entire family knew about. Ashley's mother explained that during their long-distance relationship, Jack dated a few other girls and Ashley had her typical teenage experiences. Despite the periods of no contact, their relationship continued and they continued to communicate for many years. As they grew up, Ashley and Jack's relationship grew. They began to interact not only on social media but also through video calls. This led to a more intimate and romantic relationship. Eventually, Jack became close to Ashley's family. When family members saw the two talking, they would often greet him as if he were in the living room. Jack often sent Ashley gifts such as teddy bears and wallets. Ashley's family and friends often said that she constantly compared every guy she met to Jack. Because of the 8-hour time difference between Vernon and Essex, where Jack lives, the young couple would wake up too early and stay up too late just to talk. In 2018, when Ashley was 15, she expressed a desire to meet Jack in person. However, her family would not allow her to travel alone to another continent. Like any young couple, they sometimes argued. When these arguments led Ashley to block Jack on social media, he would create new accounts or send messages through his sister or friends. This behavior upset Ashley's loved ones, but she insists that Jack is compassionate and kind. In October 2018, Jack got Ashley's name tattooed on his arm. At the time, she was 16 and he was 19. Ashley's parents thought this display of affection was too much and warned her to be careful and not to do so. Later, during an argument, Jack stabbed Ashley's name tattoo with a knife. After that, he started to act jealous and violent. He would get angry if he thought Ashley was dating other guys, even though he continued to date other girls. However, he insisted that Ashley was the one he loved and claimed that he only wanted her. One day, Ashley called a girlfriend who was at Jack's house and told her that he wouldn't let her go. According to a friend who was present during the conversation, Ashley wasn't angry and even reacted as if she was used to such situations. She simply asked Jack to stop acting crazy. Ashley did not tell her parents about this, but she did tell her friends, who insisted that she stop all contact with him. Despite his frequent arguments and troublesome behavior, the couple eventually reconciled. Ashley began working at fast food restaurants and department stores, saving money to buy things. The first thing she bought was a tablet so she could use social media more privately. She then started saving money for a trip during her senior year of high school. Ashley joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Ashley graduated from Sighton High School in 2020, planning to study law at Thompson Rivers University to pursue a career as a lawyer. She continued to work and save money in the first half of 2021. In April of that year, she was baptized as a Mormon. Ashley, known for being bold and stubborn, decided to travel to the UK to meet Jack in person and celebrate his birthday. Although her parents and friends were not very enthusiastic about the idea, they could not stop her because she was of age and had her own money. On November 12, 2021, Ashley left Canada for the UK on a 6-month tourist visa, eager for her first trip abroad. Ashley and Jack met in person on November 13, 2021. That same day, Ashley updated her profile picture to show both of them. Jack, who was 22, looked much older than the cheerful 19-year-old Ashley. He had tattoos, including some on his face. During her time in London, Ashley lived with Jack at his home. Jack had been living alone since 2020 in a public housing estate in northwest Chelmsford. Despite the area's bad reputation, they explored the more beautiful parts of Chelmsford and Essex together. Jack was affectionate, attentive, full of compliments and eager to take romantic selfies. However, he could also be inconsistent and cruel. Because Ashley was on a tourist visa, she could not work, and Jack was unemployed, relying on benefits and occasional help from his mother, Tracy, who lived nearby. Ashley often posted photos and comments about their trips online, many of which showed the couple cuddling and enjoying romantic moments. She kept in touch with her family via video calls, making it seem like everything was going well. They even adopted a kitten called Winston. However, over time, instead of going for walks or sightseeing, he preferred to stay home, use illegal drugs, and play video games. In a foreign country, Ashley was limited by Jack's interests, although she loved being outdoors. Before coming to England, one of Ashley's church friends introduced her to American missionaries who would be in Chelmsford at the same time. Ashley wanted to meet these young men, who shared her faith, but Jack forbade her from going to church on Sundays. Despite this, she kept in touch with the missionaries via text messages, secretly deleting the conversations to avoid Jack's discovery. Her new church friends quickly realized that Jack was controlling and possibly abusive. When discussing her problems with them, Ashley admitted that she knew she deserved better but just wanted Jack to be happy. Jack's control did not extend to restricting Ashley's interactions with others. About 6 weeks after her arrival, Jack texted his mother to say that he had beaten Ashley because he had discovered that she had blocked 2 phone numbers in the UK, suspecting them to belong to other men, which made him jealous. While Ashley continued to post pictures of her seemingly perfect trip online, she secretly created another profile to document her bruises. She confided in her sister Haley, but threatened to stop talking to her if she told her mother, because Ashley did not want her family to hate Jack. In late December 2021, Jack overdosed on antidepressants. Ashley quickly called an ambulance. They took Jack to the hospital, where he was treated for the overdose. Ashley was then assigned as Jack's caretaker to ensure he was safe to take his medication. Ashley hid this condition from her mother and friends, but Haley accidentally revealed it. Concerned, their mother asked Ashley to return home, but Ashley insisted on staying until Jack recovered. In early January 2022, another incident occurred. Jack hit Ashley in the head with a cup, causing her to burst into tears. She called her sister on video chat while she was forced to clean up the broken glass. In the background, Haley could see Jack pacing back and forth, screaming and grinding his teeth. Although Haley begged younger sister to return home, Ashley refused. On the 9th of that month, Jack celebrated his 23rd birthday with his family as if nothing had happened, and Ashley was there. Soon after, Jack's mother and her husband arranged a family trip to a small coastal town, hoping that a change of scenery would ease the tension. The trip looked so perfect in the photos that even Ashley's parents, who had no idea of the severity of the situation, were relieved to see their daughter calm and happy. However, this calm did not last long. In late January, during an argument, Jack hit Ashley again and threw a candle and a TV remote at her while she was on a video call with her sister Haley, shortly after which Haley again begged her to come home. Ashley initially agreed but quickly changed her mind. She believed that somewhere inside that cruel man was still the charming boy she had known for years. She hoped that time, medicine, or her love could heal him. On the morning of February 1st, 2022, Jack was angry with Ashley again. He told her to avoid him and secretly date someone else. He even demanded to see her phone and checked all of her social media. Just before 8 a.m., their neighbor, Helen Bortonshaw, heard Ashley screaming through their shared wall. A few minutes later, Ashley showed up at Jack's door. When Helen saw her, Ashley was barefoot, crying and had a bleeding cut on her palm. Ashley explained that Jack had caught her looking at nude photos of a woman and became angry. He verbally abused her, then punched and smashed her phone and threw her kitten against the wall. Although Ashley feared that Jack was trying to harm her, she asked Helen not to call the police. Helen agreed but urged Ashley to go with her to the doctor instead of going back to Jack's apartment. Ashley refused, so Helen decided to talk to Jack herself. Jack apologized for the previous incidents and remained calm, then Helen left to go to the appointment. At around 9 a.m., Ashley used Jack's cell phone to call her family. At that time, Ashley's mother knew about Jack's situation because Haley had revealed everything. Her parents quickly bought her a return ticket for February 3rd. When Ashley told Jack she was leaving, he agreed to go with her to the airport. Ashley's mother warned her to go straight to the airport if Jack attacked her again and warned him that she would contact the police if he harmed her daughter again. Ashley talked to her family for about 3 hours. When they ended the call, it was 11 a.m. in Chelmsford and 3 a.m. in Vernon. A few minutes later, Jack texted his mother, admitting that he had severely beaten Ashley, knocked her down, and possibly broken her arm. This occurred between 11:22 a.m. and 12:38 p.m. Ashley sent several text messages to family and friends from Jack's phone. Because it was dark, no one answered. She also texted her friends at the Chelmsford church, asking for help and describing the emergency. Unfortunately, these messages were not read until hours later, when it was too late to help. Between 12:38 and 12:45, Jack attacked Ashley by choking her until she stopped breathing. He then went into the kitchen. Jack took an 11-centimeter knife and stabbed Ashley in the chest and stomach about 100 times, killing her. After the brutal act, he changed his profile picture to a picture of him and Ashley, adding the caption, "Always mine." He recorded a video for Haley, expressing his love for Ashley, apologizing, admitting that he couldn't let her go and saying that he wasn't in the right mind. The video, which was never sent, shows Ashley's body lying next to him. While this was happening in England, Ashley's family in Vernon woke up to several messages from Ashley. They contacted Jamie Ashworth, a Mormon friend in Chelmsford. Jamie and Tyler Borden, another church acquaintance, went to Jack's apartment. After knocking on the door but getting no response, they called the police and left. Meanwhile, Ashley's best friend in Vernon noticed that Ashley's social media accounts were still active. In desperation, she sent a text message to Ashley. Messages from Ashley's family and friends continued to pour in, but Jack ignored them, even though they were eager to hear from her. Jack eventually called his sister Nadia. When she answered, He admitted to killing Ashley and even showed her the body. The incident happened at around 4:13 p.m. When the police entered the apartment after receiving Jamie's call, they arrived within 10 minutes. Unfortunately, it was too late. The police arrested Jack immediately. He was covered in blood and told the officers that he was psychotic, confessing to the crime. He was then taken to Chelmsford Prison. Jack Seppel's trial began on September 7, 2022, at Chelmsford Crown Court. Before the trial, Jack underwent a medical examination. A toxicology report found that he had a small amount of an illegal substance and a small amount of an antidepressant in his system. A psychiatric assessment concluded that he was fit to give evidence and stand trial. After considering the evidence against him, the court found that his guilt was clear. This evidence included a video recording of Jack confessing to the crime. Faced with this overwhelming evidence, Jack immediately pleaded guilty. The judge then informed him that, due to the seriousness of his actions and his subsequent confession, the only sentence he could receive was life imprisonment. During the trial, prosecutor Simon Spence detailed Jack's lengthy criminal record, which dates back to 2014. It was the first time Ashley's parents had learned the true nature of their daughter's boyfriend. Jack had a history of multiple arrests for stalking, kidnapping, false imprisonment and violent assault. He had also been issued with a number of restraining orders against him by his mother and ex-girlfriend. The revelation of Jack's violent and brutal past shocked Ashley's parents, who were shocked to learn of the criminal record of the man who took their daughter's life. During the hearing, the prosecution and defense presented their views on a letter Jack sent to Ashley's family while he was in prison. In the letter, Jack expressed remorse for his actions. Judge Murray ruled that the letter could be made public, citing the importance of transparency in the justice system. In the letter, Jack addressed Ashley's entire family, especially her mother and sister, Haley. He acknowledged that no action could have undone the harm he had caused or lessened their suffering. Jack accepted responsibility for his actions and acknowledged that his mental state played a significant role in the tragedy. He also stated that he had openly discussed his mental health struggles with Ashley. After his trial, Jack Seppel was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 23 years.